Happy Memorial Day weekend, Nashville. Stillman and company here on this Friday afternoon, but it's Force company as well. Jared Stillman getting an early start on this holiday weekend. So Force company, usually we're 9 to 11 on Saturdays. We're filling in with you from 2 to 6. I'm Jake Lyman. At the desk with me today, Nick Frazier.
Hello, sir.
But no Nick Keyser as he gets prepared to get married this weekend. He will be with us tomorrow morning. Connor Newt making his debut here in studio.
Yes, the big league call-up you've all been waiting for. Now you can finally see my beautiful face, even though I don't look too great today. I cut myself shaving. I need a haircut, but we're here, boys. This is the major leagues.
That is true. If people only watch Force Company on stream, they don't know what Connor looks like until right now. And we have Ian Safar behind the glass today. We're going to give Ian his own segment today. We give Connor Newt his Newt's Notes. We're going to get Ian's insights coming up later this hour as well.
Happy to have you guys in today.
Thank you, Ian.
We're excited as well. We've got a lot to get to in today's show. We're going to talk a lot of Preds. Traded Ryan McDonough earlier this week, and to talk about some of their offseason plans and where they could head from here. Also going to recap an interesting first week of Titans OTAs as well. But first, let's get to our headlines for the day. Nick Frazier, what's on your mind here on this Friday afternoon?
Kind of going back to Paul Skeen's game last week against the Cubs and how they pulled him in the sixth inning. After that, obviously you see the fatigue. That's why you got to leave a pitcher like that in. I understand 100 pitches. Leave him in for a potential no-hitter. That's my big issue. But besides that, everything's peachy. Looking forward to Mississippi State kind of rolling the table here, the SEC tournament. I know they lost last night to Vanderbilt, but I feel like they can bounce back, and with one loss on their record, they can go and win it all.
Yeah, that's coming up later this evening. I believe game one of these elimination games today, it's Kentucky and South Carolina. That's coming up at 3. And then after that, it'll be Tennessee and Mississippi State for a spot to face Vanderbilt in the semis tomorrow. Connor Newt, what you got?
This weekend, I guess I could save this for tomorrow, but I have nothing else today, so let's do it. This is racing weekend as well. I'm not a huge racing guy, but the Indy 500 is this week. And I just wanted to take a minute to wish my friend, I have had the opportunity to meet him a few times, Joseph Newgarden. He is an alumni of my high school, Pope John Paul II, and he's second in betting odds to win, to repeat. He won last year. Plus 500, Scott McLaughlin is plus 450 favored. And Kyle Larson completing the double duty, I guess you could say, as he's racing in the Indy 500 and then flying over to, I believe it's Charlotte, to race in the Coke 600. So, yeah, it's a big racing weekend. Like I said, I'm not a huge racing guy, but, our friend, our tribal chief, Chase McCabe, is, if you hear me, you haven't heard me, I always call Chase the tribal chief, so get used to that. But, yeah, Indy 500 this weekend. I believe it's Sunday morning. You can actually listen to it right here on 102.5, and then later that night we'll have the Coke 600. Racing station.
I was about to say, your racing station. You can listen right here on 102.5, The Game. I'm debating about what I want to talk about. I do want to mention, if you haven't heard us before, you're going to have plenty of chances to hear Force Company over this weekend. We're with you from 2 to 6 today, 9 to 11 tomorrow morning, and then we'll have a special Memorial Day show from 11 to 2:30 on Monday. So 3 shows in 4 days. So I've got some headlines that I have queued up, but I'm not sure which way I want to go with it. I'm going to go with this one because I just heard Derek talking about the top 32 receivers that PFF rated, and they had all the rookies in there, Adunze and Marvin Harrison Jr. and Malik Neighbors. I just wanted to talk about, I have a deep distrust of PFF, of Pro Football Focus, for one reason, and it was because back in high school, one of my friends, he knew football fan. They let him do it. He was grading college football games as a 17-year-old. So that's why I don't trust PFF, because who knows who's behind these grades, who's watching this film. And my friend was very knowledgeable, but do I take his input as the end-all, be-all of which players I think are good or not?
Absolutely not.
No, I don't. I don't take a high school kid's thoughts on NFL or college football at his word. So that's why I have a deep distrust of PFF. So hearing Derek kind of go off on them, I was like, I'm with you, Derek. PFF, they're just making up numbers for the most part, which I'm sure there is a formula of some sort, but That is my reason why I do not take PFF at their word.
I asked D-Mace in one of the breaks right afterwards, and I was like, hey, D-Mace, like, I think they do a pretty good job over at PFF. Just joking with them. And he's just looking at me cold-eyed like, you better be joking. I was like, I'm just kidding, man. I'm just kidding.
Was that around when Derek was playing?
No, I don't believe so. PFF just seems so new gen.
Yeah.
Absolutely not. If it was on some spreadsheet of some regard. I don't know.
Someone's writing it down, pen to paper.
I want to say Bussin' with the Boys this week asked Brian Callahan about that, and he didn't want to come out and flat out say, like, we don't care about PFF grades, but he kind of tiptoed around it, just like, well, it's not really something that we take into account when we're preparing for an opponent. So that's my headline is PFF. I'm out on it, and I'm with Derek Mason there. Our question of the day today, we want to get you involved here as you head into your Memorial Day weekend. You can text or call 615-737-1025. Our phone and text line are driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Our question here is just, what are you doing this Memorial Day weekend? I know everybody's probably got some big plans, maybe heading out of town. So text or call, let us know, what are you doing this weekend? And I'm sure we'll talk about our plans throughout the weekend as well. And again, Nick Keyser, our fourth here at Forrest Company, not with us as he is preparing for his wedding day on Sunday. We're going to get a full lowdown of that tomorrow, I'm sure.
I'll be boots on the ground reporter for that. So,
and we're going to get, I'm sure we'll spend some time on Monday getting the full recap of Nick Keyser's wedding.
Oh, boy. I've been told there have been some people that will be in attendance, and I told Keyser today before he left, when you hear those church bells ring, that's when it gets real. So he was like, yeah, I feel like that's when it's going to all settle into the stomach. He's going to have butterflies, no doubt about it. It's going to be great. I'm going to be taking pictures, send them to both of you guys. It'd be great.
See, we didn't get the invite. So
don't worry, I'll be. I have the eyes.
We'll be there. We'll be there in spirit. We love you, Nick Keyser.
That's what I'm saying. I'll take pictures, send them to you. It's all good.
Yeah, make sure you just go send a congratulations to Nick Keyser on Twitter @KeyserNick. Just let him know you're thinking about him as he heads into his wedding day on Sunday. And again, he'll be with us 9 to 11 tomorrow for our second of 3 shows on this Memorial Day weekend. We got a fun show coming up, guys. We're going to talk a lot of Preds. We're going to talk a lot of Titans. I do want to mention, because we'll get back to this towards the end of the show, Vandy baseball. How about them this week out in Hoover? Tim Corbin now is the all-time leader in SEC tournament wins after beating Mississippi State, past Ron Polk last night with that 4-3 victory. There's something about the Commodores playing down in Hoover. Won the whole thing last year, and now 2 wins away from doing it again after a disappointing season for Vanderbilt baseball so far this year.
Yeah, it's almost like once you get to the playoffs or just any postseason play, they're a different ball club. Like Tim Corbin's like, we've been here before, it's business. And like he's also said in, pregame interviews with Andrew Allegretti, just play ball. The first word that comes out there is play. So if you just play ball, the rest takes care of itself. And that's what I like most about Tim Corbin, is that he's just such a relaxed guy behind the microphone and just understanding of what his players can do. And when you know that your players can kind of do what you expect them to do, hit home runs, get RBIs and so forth, then you're good.
He does a great job of, I guess, insinuating the idea to his players. We take this one game at a time.
Absolutely.
One inning at a time. And you're seeing that result. I mean, I know they haven't had the ideal Vandy boys season, but they're showing you they're capable of making a run in this tournament, not just SEC. They can make a run in this NCAA tournament. I believe I saw they're projected a 2 seed. So they won't host, obviously, but they're still pretty decently seeded, and I feel they could make a run if they really put their minds to it and play the way they've been playing. The offense has been just incredible lately.
Yeah. I saw there was a projection that they would be in Indiana State's region. Imagine being Indiana State and you're this mid-major team that gets to host a regional, and you see Vanderbilt pop up in your region. Probably not what you're hoping for on Selection Monday coming up on Memorial Day. Before we hit a break here, he told me he was going to call in. Our good friend David Janes is on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. David, thanks for calling in. You followed through on your promise.
Jake, I always keep a promise. It's David here. I'm a long-time caller, first-time listener. It's good to be on these stations or these airwaves as a caller, and because I'm usually just there making sure that you guys are staying on and, not sleeping. But, that's what I'll be doing this weekend is, sleeping, actually. So I'm very excited for this Memorial Day weekend, especially being going to see Nick Kaiser getting married. He decided he wanted to get married. Oh, look at him. So, yeah.
David, thank you for the call. Enjoy your Memorial Day weekend. I know you've had a busy week, so I hope you get some rest, and hopefully everything goes well with Mr. Kaiser's wedding up there on Sunday.
Yeah. Hopefully, we're hoping. See you guys.
See you, David. David James calling in on our phone line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We will step aside here for the first time today. Again, the Fours Company crew, Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt, filling in for Jared Stillman on this Friday ahead of Memorial Day weekend. When we come back, we're going to talk some Preds here. Preds made a very interesting move this week. They traded away Ryan McDonough. The start of what I think could be a kind of make or break offseason for this Predators team in terms of what path they want to take. Rebuild or go for it? We're going to talk about that coming up next here on Stillman and Company on this Friday afternoon, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune in to 94.9 The Fan today as the Nashville Sounds take on the Charlotte Knights at First Horizon Park. Pregame at 6:20, first pitch at 6:35. Coverage also available on 94.9 The Fan, on the 94.9 The Fan app, and at 949thefan.com. Sounds baseball on 94.9 The Fan, presented by Twin Peaks, Family Leisure, and Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Stillman and Company here on this Friday afternoon. It's the Fours Company crew in studio, though. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt, Ian Safar is our producer. Guys, let's talk some Preds here. Big week for the Predators. Before the Stanley Cup has even been raised, the Preds make a trade, sending Ryan McDonagh back to the Tampa Bay Lightning, getting a second-round pick in 2025, a seventh-round pick this year, and sending a fourth-round pick this year back to Tampa Bay. But I think the big news is it opens up about $7 million in cap space. This Preds team has a lot of draft capital, a lot of cap space. This could be an offseason where if they go make enough moves, they could put themselves in a spot to be a contender next year.
Yeah, I mean, this is prime time off-season move time for the Preds. Like, when it's time to make a move, that's when they need to do it. If it's going to be for a big-name forward, Barry Trotz has mentioned it multiple times and throughout producing all the shows, needing a top 9, switching up the top 9 a little bit. Like, everybody keeps talking about Mitch Marner and so forth. Like, some reporters out there are saying, yeah, maybe so. Some reporters out there saying nobody's talked to him. There's been no contact. So it's kind of the catch-22 situation of how do you really decipher all these rumors? You just don't. You just pick which ones you're kind of leaning towards, you know?
Are we all in agreement that they traded McDonagh, A, to get younger, B, is kind of a salary cap thing, so they can re-sign Saros? I think that's the plan here.
No. I'm disagreeing 100%. There was plenty of money beforehand, before this McDonagh thing happened, to sign Saros, in my opinion. There's just too much money to just be left on the table right there. There's no reason to put that out there. I definitely think this McDonagh thing was more of a family situation, more of a, I'm up there in age. Maybe Tampa on paper is a better route for him to win a cup than it is with the Preds right now. I mean, that's kind of, if you look at it, that might be the best route for him.
Well, we kind of joked when this happened in our group chat that maybe they trade him to Tampa Bay. Steven Stamkos hits the open market. Maybe that's a guy you just go use that money to get one of Tampa Bay's best player back here in Nashville. But I agree with you, Nick. I think this is Ryan McDonagh said he wanted to change the scenery. Barry Trotz made it happen. But I think you're right, Connor, that it kind of is a win-win for both parties. I think Ryan McDonagh wanted to change the scenery. They sent him back to Tampa Bay. But for the Preds, now you have even more flexibility. Now you have Tampa Bay's first and second round picks in 2025. If you wanted to make a big move, all of the necessary elements are there if Barry Trotz wants to make that move, or he can just re-sign UC Saros.
Connor, would you like to elaborate more on that? I mean, it's just, to me, the UC Saros thing, it's going to happen, just from my perspective. I don't know nothing. It's going to happen regardless. That's just straight up front, all the above. Everybody keeps talking about, move on from Saros, bring up Askarov, and so forth. No, it's UC Saros. It's going to happen. He's going to be here for the next 3-4 years, probably going to be a long-term deal. But in the meantime, could definitely see a trade in between the long-term deal. And then that's when you kind of bring up Askarov or, be the understudy of UC Saros at that point.
I'll bring a change of scenery to this program. Usually the guy that comes on here is clamoring to get rid of Saros. But to me, Askarov is not ready. He is not ready. He's shown that this season especially. He's very raw, very young, and needs to do a little more maturing. To me, why would you not, granted, I know he has not won a playoff game, but to me, that's not 100% the goalie's fault. Look at it this way. If you have a quarterback that hasn't won a playoff game, is that indicative of how good the quarterback is? For a while, Patrick Mahomes, he lost a Super Bowl against Tom Brady. Was that indicative of how good Patrick Mahomes is as a quarterback? No. So to me, the goalie situation in the Preds, they need to re-sign Saros. They need to negotiate with him. It's going to be I'm reading 8x8 is probably the ideal.
Yeah, that's what everybody has it out there.
Yeah. I would pay him, but what you need to do is you need to up the defense and your goal scoring around it. That way, you don't put Saros in these situations to where he lets up easy goals, or, he does the Pecorino thing and chokes occasionally. But it's not indicative of how good of a goaltender UC Saros is and how valuable he is to this team.
Jake, your thoughts?
I think I understand where Jared comes from when he says that they should move on from UC Saros because we've talked about it on this show before that is your easiest way to get yourself an elite goal scorer.
Right.
Is to trade the goalie. And if Yaroslav Askarov becomes as good as UC Saros, and we know his ceiling is that high, they wouldn't have taken him so high in the first round of the draft if they didn't think his ceiling was that high. But the question, Connor, is he ready right now? And I think he has shown that he's probably not ready to make that move. So if you could get UC Saros back on a smaller deal, I think that's probably your best option. But can you go get that elite goal scorer without moving UC Saros? I think that has to be the question. You look at some of the players in free agency this year, Sam Reinhart, Jake Gensel, Steven Stamkos we talked about. There are some guys out there who, if you bring them in and pair them with Philip Forsberg, maybe that's the move that you need to take the next step. But also, I know Barry Trotz has talked about being high in the draft is the easiest way to find that elite centerman and that guy who can take your team to the Stanley Cup final and give yourself a chance to win a cup.
Yeah, I mean, to the point of a Stamkos or a Gensel or any of those guys out there, it's the way I saw the McDonough trade, it's solely to make sure Stamkos and McDonough stay in Tampa. That's just how you read the tea leaves, and that's kind of what it looks like. And if you look at Gensel, possibly so. Honestly, that or Reinhart, those two are solid options. It's just a matter of what's the price tag. Are you able to get them on that right deal like you're alluding to, Jake?
My other question about this trade, Barry Trotz talked a lot earlier about how he has to replace Ryan McDonough, and he's not going to do that through the pipeline. He's going to do it through, I guess, an extrusive source. So who out there can you go get to replace a Ryan McDonough?
And I think it was Nick Kiesner mentioned Brandon Montour, who's down in Florida, has familiarity with Andrew Brunette. Maybe that's a guy who you bring in, and he can be that Ryan McDonough replacement. Because, yeah, you're right. You do have to make that replacement. You have young defensemen. Spencer Stastny showed a lot of promise this year. Tanner Molendijk, he's in juniors right now, so you don't really know how long it'll be till he's ready to contribute at the NHL level.
He's 19.
He's 19. He's not coming in and replacing Ryan McDonough. I understand that. But you do have those guys who are going to be ready. I think they're in a good spot to long-term build up those defensive pairings, but I think you do need an external addition to replace Ryan McDonough.
I am curious. Just take that leap here. Ian, do you have any thoughts on a possible opening to this free agency market? Is there anybody that sticks out in your brain?
As far as forwards?
Yes.
I think I heard Elliot say one that was pretty. Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet mentioned Chandler Stevenson.
I did hear that yesterday. Yeah.
From Vegas.
Yeah.
I actually think that might be a pretty decent fit. It's going to be hard to find the top line center because ideally I think you would like to move Ryan O'Reilly to your second center. But I'm not sure you're going to be able to find your top line center this offseason. But if you add Chandler Stevenson, that would be a pretty good second line center. If you could keep that top line, O'Reilly, Forsberg, Nyquist, and then you add Stevenson and Evangelista, and you don't have to have Novak there. And maybe move Novak down to the third line. That might kind of just move everybody's cheese in the kind of right direction and kind of fit their roles better. I don't think they're going to be able to go out and spend somebody big, but if they can get somebody in that $5 to $6 million range, that money from McDonough, who was 6'7", I believe. So you put someone around there, $6 million, and kind of pencil him as your second line center. I think that would be kind of in that direction.
Ian, are you in the camp of, with the Preds having 5 second-round draft picks? Are you in the camp of possibly getting about 3, maybe 4 of those second-round picks and kind of just using them as trade options?
I think GM Barry Trotz mentioned something about that you see around the deadline teams using their second-round picks to trade for established NHLers. And I think that's kind of where where you could really see that. If there's something happen in the season, if something happens during the trade deadline, maybe something during the draft, you can trade one or two, package those second round picks, and you might be able to get some type of veteran in return. Maybe not, and just someone more established. So I think those, if with 5 picks, they're definitely in play. Absolutely be traded.
You see that in the NFL a lot too. Teams package these picks to get, that star receiver. You saw it with earlier this offseason, Stephon Diggs. You see it. You don't see it a lot with quarterbacks, but you see it to get kind of these stud skill position players, running backs, wide receivers, even defensive ends, corners, stuff like that. The Titans did it earlier this season with L'Jarius Sneed. What'd they package, a second and a third or something?
Just a third.
Just a third?
Future third.
Oh, well, disregard that one then. But
but still, a relatively high pick to go get an established player. I think that's probably what Barry Trotz has been trying to do. You load up on this draft capital, and then when you feel like you're ready to go make a move and find that player who you can plug in and maybe puts you over the top, you have the resources to go do it. Coming up next, I want to talk kind of about that exact same thing. The Preds are at a crossroads here where we've mentioned before that they're not exactly a young team on the ascent, but they're not an old team that's quite ready to rebuild and tear it all down yet. Do we think they have enough to go for it this year with those picks, with this cap space? Do we think they have enough to go and use those resources and get a lineup that can go make a run into Stanley Cup? That's coming up next here on this Friday edition of Stillman and Company with Forrest Company sitting in for Jared. Up next here on the program, do want to mention we are broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. Talking more Preds coming up next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company heading into this holiday weekend. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt in for Jared Stillman today, the Force Company crew. You can again listen to us tomorrow, 9 to 11, and then a special edition of Force Company on Monday, Memorial Day, from 11 to 2:30. Talking about Preds here early on in the show. We were just kind of talking about where Barry Trotz could go. Plenty of resources this offseason. But my big question is, do they have enough to go for it this year? Because they are at a spot where, yes, you have young talent, but like Tanner Molendyk and Yaroslav Askarov, maybe they're a few years away, but your core isn't getting any younger with Forsberg and Yossi and O'Reilly. Does this team have enough to say, hey, we're going all in, we're going to go get Mitch Marner or another elite goal scorer, and we're going to try and go all in on this year? Or is there just not enough there that no matter how many big moves that they make, they're probably still not in that upper echelon of the NHL?
I think they can be in the upper echelon with the rest of the NHL. I was kind of talking to you both, in between the break here. Like, the Preds have so much draft capital, and they have a solid core, young core in Milwaukee. There is no need to have, any draft capital right now, because the next two drafts they're not really great. The talent there's not, no Connor McDavids, no Connor Bedard's. There's none of those really in the next two drafts. So why on God's green earth do you want to just have all this draft capital and not use it to trade for actual proven talent already in the NHL, where you can open up a possible Stanley Cup window or open up a possible bigger term window for the Preds? I mean, it makes no sense to me how I'll talk to some people, friends and family and so forth, and they're like, oh, but yeah, Preds, they could really stock up on the draft. I'm like, no. Just trade those picks away and get a solid, established forward, and or if you're at the market, get a 2-for-1, get a BOGO deal.
Really? See, I kind of disagree with you. And here's why. I like the youth movement. I like having young guys come up through the system, prove their worth, and become kind of these, I don't want to say phenoms, but reliable players. Look at guys like, let's say, Luke Evangelista. Not necessarily a high pick, right? No one saw him as a Connor Bedard or a Sidney Crosby or someone like that. He's kind of worked his way up through the ranks. And now he's very early in his career with the Predators, but he is kind of proving himself to be the next guy for this team.
Right. But you also have to put it that perspective as well. Yeah, you have those guys that are proving themselves, the young core, that youth movement. You got that already. These draft picks, you have them. You don't need them. If you get established players like a Mitch Marner and or that, they are good, solid core number one pieces to go along with a Luke Evangelista, a Tanner Molendyk when he gets to that point. Like when you have your youth guys, Juuso Parssinen, Zach LaRue, all those type of guys, when they're the younger aspect of it from Milwaukee to come up to Nashville, and you got Mitch Marner waiting already up in Nashville. This is a great 1-2 punch. There's no need to have all this draft capital. That's just me.
I'm with you, Frazier. I think hockey is the most similar to baseball in terms of when you draft a guy, you're rarely ever, unless it's Connor Bedard, you're rarely ever just going to plug and play him into your lineup. It's not the NFL where if you draft a guy, for instance, at 7 overall, you're not making him your first-line left wing right off the bat. Like, these guys take time. They've got to marinate. Some of them don't even end up playing in your AHL affiliate for a couple of years. So I'm with you that if you have 5 second-round picks and, 3 first-round picks over the next 2 years?
I believe so.
Are those 8 guys really going to make an impact for you in the next couple of years? I really don't think so. I think you're probably not going to see the fruits of those draft picks until 2027, 2028, when you have Philip Forsberg and Roman Josi in there, maybe towards the back end of their prime right now. You need to take advantage of that right now. And if you can package these draft picks together, maybe send some of these young players, maybe not Zach LaRue, but like Igor Afanasyev, package one of them with a bunch of draft picks and go get Mitch Marner or go get, I don't know. This is up to Barry Trotz, but I'm with you. I think using all of those picks is not going to get you to where you want to go, at least in the near future.
Yeah, I mean, I agree to Connor's point at this youth movement, yes, but it's already there. And so if you already have something, like if it ain't broke, don't fix it. these guys are developing. And like you're alluding to in both of you, they're developing. And once they get to the point of peak development, either they're going to max out as a second-line guy or a third-line guy. Then, like I was saying before, you already have your key cornerstone pieces that are going to get you to the next level. And personally, I think would prolong a Philip Forsberg or a Roman Josi type career. Because when you have stronger, I guess you'd call them pillar guys in the lineup, then that's going to prolong all your key other guys that, like a Forsberg or a Josi, they don't have much pressure on their shoulders. It's an even distribution. I mean, it's fair.
What I'm trying to get at is, yes, you have to have youth. You have to. You don't want these guys like, Roman Josi. He's 34. UC Saros is coming up on 30. So is Philip Forsberg. When those guys are cooked and they're done and they're at the end of their career and they've exited their prime, you do not want to be the Pittsburgh Penguins. The Pittsburgh Penguins have zero prospects right now. And all their old guys that won them those 2 Stanley Cups and they went on that historic run and all that, they're all cooked.
Yeah.
Not named Sidney Crosby. And even him, he's kind of on the back end of his prime. He may only have 2 or 3 more years left in him.
I'm
nearing
with
40.
you. I don't mean to interrupt, but I'm with you, Connor. Yes, bring this youth movement. But like you look at the draft picks again, there's so much draft capital. You don't need it.
I agree.
And you could get solid core guys that are in the younger ages in the NHL and still bring them in. And you still have your youth guys from Milwaukee and bring them up.
I'm not saying use all 5 second rounders, all 3.
Right.
Absolutely not.
Right.
No. You have to trade some of those to bring in some guys. But do not give up on the young guys. Someone may surprise you. I'll put this in NFL terms. Look at Amon-Ra St. Brown.
True.
4th round pick. Titans overlooked him, actually, drafting
Des Fitzpatrick.
Trading up for Des Fitzpatrick.
Passing up Amon-Ra. Amon-Ra is arguably a top 5 receiver in this league. Now, the NFL is obviously very different from the NHL, where they plugged in Amon-Ra, and he kind of proved his worth and worked his way up the depth chart. Now he's the number 1 for the Detroit Lions.
Right. But
what I'm saying is, yes, you have to let these guys marinate and sit in the crock pot for a little bit, but don't give up on them. A lot of people are giving up on guys like Phil Tomasino and Jared included. He thinks he's a finished product, but I don't think he's a finished product. I don't think Juuso Parsonen's a finished product. I don't think Tommy Novak is a finished product. I think these guys have more to prove, and I think by keeping guys like that around on your team, you're prolonging the opening of your window.
Right.
For example. Yeah.
Okay.
Connor, I'm mad that you brought up the Amon-Ra St. Brown thing because I take the draft very seriously. Like, it's one of my favorite events of the calendar year, and I'm not usually right about these things. Like, I'm not a football expert, but I usually will have a draft crush, typically a wide receiver. The year before, or 2 years before, actually, 2019, my draft crush at wide receiver was J.J. Arcega-Whiteside out of Stanford. The Titans took A.J. Brown. They were right about that one. But my draft crush in 2021, I wanted Amon-Ra St. Brown. And heading into the 3rd day, the Titans hadn't taken a receiver yet, and I was like, it's got to be Amon-Ra. I saw them trade up. I was like, here it is. It's Amon-Ra. And then it's Des Fitzpatrick. And I was seeing all these tweets about how he had undrafted grades from some of the experts, and I will never forgive John Robinson for that one. I think that one might even be worse than A.J. Brown to me.
Yeah, I'm kind of in the same boat with you. But we're talking draft just briefly. I looked at the draft one year. It was the year they drafted Chigakonkwo. And I was like, oh, Isaiah Likely. Love it. Coach of Carolina, versatile guy. Titans pass on him and go draft Chigakonkwo.
Yeah.
And I was like, that's not great.
I get it. The GMs are the ones who get paid to do all this, and they've got the scouting staffs. But sometimes the obvious pick is the right pick that the fans see. Last thing on the Preds here before we move on. I said this on our Saturday show a few weeks back, but I really think that Barry Trotz, when he took this GM role last year, I think he expected to be pretty bad this year. Because he talked about it in his first couple of interviews that sometimes you have to take a few steps back in order to take the big leap forward. And I think he expected to be towards the bottom of the league, be in the draft lottery, maybe have a chance at one of the top couple of picks. And no one's ever going to complain about making the playoffs and winning, but it's just, I feel like it's put him in this spot where he doesn't know whether to tear it down or to try and make a run for it. we're going to see over the next couple of months in this offseason which way he decides to go, because I feel like right now it's that inflection point of which way do you go. We're going to see what happens here in this offseason. Going to be very, very interesting, and already is with Ryan McDonough traded earlier this week. Coming up next, it's time for Ian's Insights. We mentioned in our Saturday show, if you haven't tuned in, Connor is usually behind the glass as our producer. And we give him one segment where he just gets to pick whatever topic he wants, and that's what we go with for the full 15 minutes. So Ian Safar is taking over the program next here on Stillman and Company, special edition with Forrest Company in the studio here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman Company here on 102.5, 106.3. The Game brought to you by Jared Company's Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division. Call 615-515-1270 or visit jaredcompaniesinc.com. The Force Company crew is in for Jared today as he gets a head start on the holiday weekend. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. But this segment is all about our producer, Ian Safar. It's time for Ian's Insights. Ian, the floor is yours.
Okay, yes. Fun little segment I guess you guys have here on the weekly show Force Company on Saturday. Okay, I did a little, couple of quick hitters, some things that have been on my mind this week, maybe a little bit. We'll stick with the hockey theme since we've been talking a little bit of Preds offseason, the trade for Ryan McDonough. And I've been watching a little bit of the Worlds Championship. The Hockey Worlds are on right now. A lot of the NHL players, they get eliminated from their season. They, join their international team. It's not the Olympics, but it's pretty good. And it just made me really miss Olympic NHL hockey. I'd say the Olympics and the NHL, when it would come on, when the NHL players get to play in the Olympics, it's just the best of the best. Team USA versus Canada and Sweden and Finland and Russia, and just going through it. I always like to play this game, but I think Team USA, they could have a pretty legit team. I mean, they got some. Is it going to compare with Canada and they'll be right there with Sweden? But, you're talking Austin Matthews, both the Kachuk brothers, Jack Eichel. In goal, you got Hellebuck, Demko, and Ottinger. On defense, you have the Jack Hughes. Well, I guess Jack Hughes is the forward, but you have the Hughes brothers. So you have Quinn Hughes, Luke Hughes, and then Jack Hughes, the brother, who's the forward. You have Adam Fox and Charlie McAvoy, Seth Jones. You got some top-level players. It would just be fun. It just made me miss the Olympics.
Are they bringing that back? I read somewhere that they approved.
I think we're hopeful they're going to bring that back. Yeah,
that's going to be awesome.
I think the players want to do it. And so it just made me miss Olympic hockey. And Matt Boldy, who plays for Minnesota, just been watching. I think he's going to be a stud.
Oh, yeah. Well, you could get Patty Kane on that team, too.
He might be a little past his prime. But, Jake Gensel could be on there. Johnny Gaudreau is still on there. I don't know. It's just be fun. I just missed Olympic hockey with NHL players. So that was my first little musing there. I don't know if you guys had any thoughts on that. Second, we've been talking a lot about Traylon Burks this week, the addition of Tyler Boyd, all the wide receivers, and I've been going through the snap counts. I'm interested to see how the Titans utilize their wide receivers with snap counts and slots in the whole formation, because we're under the impression that Tyler Boyd is pretty much strictly a slot guy. So if Tyler Boyd's in the game, he played. Hold on, I have the list right here. Tyler Boyd, let's see. He played 48 snaps per game last year, which was 76% of the snaps. So if Tyler Boyd plays approximately 75% of the snaps this season with the Titans, and all those are in the slot, I'm just interested to see how that goes with the versatility of a Ridley, who played 85% of his snaps last season. Hopkins played 72% of the snaps last season. So if you're talking about that, there's definitely some room for some type of carryover when Boyd's not in the game. Could you put Ridley or Hopkins in the slot, and you bring in Burks, who played 62% of the snaps, and NWI, Nick Westbrook-Akine, played 70% of the snaps last year. So I'm just interested to see how the whole Tyler Boyd situation goes with the slot and what that does for the versatility of the offense with Ridley and Hopkins, because both of them are good in the slot, and I'm just interested to see how that plays out.
It is awesome to look at the Titans wide receiver core this year, and Nick Westbrook-Akine is comfortably your wide receiver 5 instead of the last couple years where he's kind of been in the mix for wide receiver 2 at times when Traylon Burks isn't on the field.
Well, that's why I think they like him, is because he can play every wide receiver position, and when someone needs a breather, he can go in there, and you're not going to be able, he knows what to do, and he'll know every position. So
he's going to be their Chris Moore to me this year.
I agree.
Every once in a while, felt like every game, Chris Moore would just have a big play, and then I mean, you wouldn't see him the rest of the game.
So
but
if Ridley, Boyd, and Hopkins are all in the game at the same time, is Boyd only going to be in the slot? And what does that mean? How many? And just interested to see how they move those roles around and see what Callahan can do with that. So it's something I was interested. And this is kind of my old man get off my lawn kind of
This is what we were looking for.
that I kind of had. These like in arena sing-alongs from these people. Like, for example, there's a commercial, like in a hockey game, and there's the commercial break, and they're getting ready to do the face-off, and there's the song, right? And it's usually some super lame song, like Blink 182.
Or Mr. Brightside.
Or Mr. Brightside. That's actually written on my sheet. And one of these other really kind of, or like My Own Worst Enemy, was that like Lit or something like that? Some of these terrible songs. And they'll play them, and then the play goes, they drop the puck, they stop the song, but the crowd continues to sing.
Ian says no friends in low places.
No. Enough with the singing. Enough with the sing-alongs. We're not at a concert. We are going to a sporting event to watch the game, and the song is playing, and the game has started. You will stop singing now, and especially these terrible songs.
So Country Road, John Denver, that's no.
I mean, I guess I get it,
Is
but
that a pass?
Maybe, but it's mostly like the Blink 182 and the 90s rock.
It's all the same songs
and
every
it's
game.
And they're just terrible. And it's like, okay, that's enough. My sing-alongs done. See ya.
And I'm going to show off my Virginia Tech homerism later in the show, but I do have to say one of my favorite things about Enter Sandman when Tech does it for their games is that they will cut off the music and the crowd will sing. Especially at basketball games, they'll do it as they tip the ball off. So the first defensive possession, it's just the whole crowd singing like "Sleep with one eye open." Like I'm loving it. But I agree, Mr. Brightside. Like Michigan does that at the Big House, and they act like it's the coolest thing ever, and it's just I can't stand it.
Yeah, it's just an old man get off my lawn thing, So
I don't like when schools take over stuff like that and claim it's their tradition. Like you saw it last year with Alabama with the whole naysayer thing. Alabama didn't invent the term naysayer. Like
They did not.
I know it sounds like I'm insinuating something else, but that term's been around for like hundreds and hundreds of years. It's not an Alabama thing. So can we stop with the whole lank thing? It just gets on my nerves.
Ian, Dylan in Antioch on the text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says he totally agrees. If he hears Mr. Brightside one more time, he will lose his mind.
Thank you, Dylan.
That was Ian's insights as we let Ian Safar, producer, take over the show for one segment here. We do have some other people on the text line who say, "Where's Jared? They need their OTA updates." And someone else says, Mitch in Bellevue says, "Can at least one of you have a Jared-style overreaction about something at OTAs?"
On it.
Don't worry. That's coming up in the next hour. We have plenty of overreaction planned about Titans OTAs in the next hour. What would Stillman and Company be without overreacting about football in May? This is what we do. That's coming up next in hour 2 of the program. Again, special edition of Stillman and Company, the Forest Company guys, in for Jared today as he starts off his Memorial Day weekend. We will get into Titans talk coming up next. You're on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman and Company sending you into your Memorial Day weekend. Special edition as Force Company sitting in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt, Ian Safar running the show behind the glass. You can get involved on our text line or on our phone line, 1025 The Game, at 615-737-1025, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We've had people on the text line talking a lot about where's the Titans talk. We talked a lot of Preds in the first hour. Titans talk starts now. We are going to be doing all the overreacting to OTAs over the next hour. Guys, you can draw a lot from these first time you see these guys out on the field. This is the first time we're getting a real good look at Calvin Ridley and J.C. Latham. A lot to like about what we've seen so far, but again, it is early. It's only May. Everything's going to be sunshine and rainbows until we hit training camp, but what have you guys seen from OTAs this week that's really gotten your attention through the first week?
Will Levis has a cannon for an arm. And I know we say that, and that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean he's a franchise quarterback. That doesn't mean he's a bust. But Will Levis, if given the time and the offensive line, which I agree with Jared on that point, the right tackle to me is very concerning. But if given time and protection and the right receivers, which I feel the Titans have invested in this offseason, obviously grabbing Ridley and Boyd, and you still have D-Hop. If given the time, the opportunity, and the right people, he can be a dude. He's got the ceiling. He's got the X factor to me. And I say that partially as a Kentucky fan, watching him grow up, kind of develop, coming from Penn State to Kentucky, with Wan'Dale Robinson he was throwing to, and then he had a down year the next year with no real proven wide receiver. I feel like he is absolutely a system guy. If given the right system and the right people around him, he can do some damage.
I agree with you, Connor. I think that the plan here for Rand and Brian Callahan this offseason clearly has been, let's give Will Levis the best chance he possibly has to succeed. You've got veteran receivers around him. The question is the offensive line, obviously. Will J.C. Latham bring an immediate, it'd be tough to be a downgrade. I was going to say an immediate upgrade over Dillard this year. You would hope that if you pick him 7th overall, he can be better than Andre Dillard was last year.
If you're talking about saloon doors, that's Andre Dillard at its finest.
But then again, we thought it couldn't be worse than 2 years ago. So I will leave my judgment until we see J.C. Latham on the field. But you would think with the additions that they've had with Latham and Cushenberry that Will Levis will be better protected this year. You've got 2 dynamic backs out there with Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears. If Will Levis doesn't succeed this year, it is on him.
100%.
Correct?
Yes. No, 100%. And a little bit off side note here. You mentioned running backs. You mentioned Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard. That's kind of been my main emphasis just during OTAs, is because a lot of the guys that the Titans brought in after the draft were running backs for the most part. That running back room is pretty heavy. You get Dylan Johnson from, I believe, the University of Washington. Is that right? A lot of just undrafted running backs, and that it's just such an expendable position now that you're just bringing in whoever. And that, I get it. It's a throw-first offense. And yes, Will Levis should be king at this offense. This is what Titans fans are hoping for, that this is an electric offense to where we don't have to worry about it anymore. It's always been the concern of, man, can we have that solidified number 1 wide receiver? And now you got that. You got a solidified number 1 and solidified number 2, and you're hoping to have a solid solidified number 3. But as for running backs, Tajay Spears and Tony Pollard, you're hoping Tony Pollard doesn't have a regression type year. You sign him to this deal, and you're hoping, hey, just give us good production. They're going to use him some in the pass game, probably so, along with Tajay Spears. But, yeah, these guys can run between the tackles. It's just a matter of if one gets hurt, what is that next man up? Is it going to be a Julius Chestnut? Hassan Haskins is at OTAs. I thought he was off the team.
I kind of forgot about Hassan Haskins.
About him. There's some names out there I'm like, whoa, still on the Titans roster, man, really? So if that's the case, who's going to be that number 3 running back when one of those top 2 guys goes down? That's my big concern, and I guess you call it a little bit of overreaction, but I mean, everybody keeps singing, we've had Derrick Henry the Titans have had Derrick Henry for so long, they haven't had to worry about that position. So now when you have a Tony Pollard, you hope is healthy, and you have a Tajay Spears who showed a lot of promise last year. If he can take another step up and just hope they both stay healthy, you shouldn't have any problems. But if one does go down, I'd say you're a little bit in the hot water, a little concerned.
I just love that this year we will be able to watch a modern offense. I hated the last few years when the Titans, it would be like 2nd down and 7, and they'd run 3 tight ends out there and Cody Hollister.
Yep.
And I would be screaming at my TV, they're running the football. They're running it. And every time they were running it, it's going to be so nice to have Brian Callahan, who clearly knows how to run a modern offense. The Bengals threw the ball and put out 11 personnel more than almost anybody in the league last year. So I'm so excited to see that when on 3rd down, guess what? We can run out personnel of DeAndre Hopkins, Calvin Ridley, Tyler Boyd, and then maybe it's Chigakonkwo and Tajay Spears. Maybe you run a 2-back set and have Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears out there. It's just nice to have a modern offense with modern weapons. And seeing Calvin Ridley in OTAs this week, he looks as advertised.
Yes.
He looks explosive out there, which I'm excited to see. I'm excited. I think if I had to pick outside of Will Levis, players I'm most excited to see on the field when the season rolls around, I think it's Calvin Ridley, because I think he's a year back from that suspension now. I think he could have a huge impact on this team.
Now, I'll tell you who does concern me, and I know we'll probably get into this a little bit later. T'Vondre Sweat practices for 2 days and then gets hurt. I mean, we saw the red flags coming, and I'm not saying he's done. He could very, very well be a good player. But, like, come on, man. You got to show us something. You got to show us that just because you're, what is he, 360?
I mean, I think he was listed at 360.
Yeah.
You don't really know what he is.
Yeah,
until...
we don't know. But, I mean, like, come on, man. Just show me something. Like, I want to believe in you, and you're supposed to be the Danico Autry replacement, but
more Tier Tart.
Or Tier Tart, yeah.
Tier Tart.
That is more of the comparison to me. He is more of a Tier Tart to me.
I thought it was funny. I was listening to Jared's show. I think it was on Wednesday. Whichever day T'Vondre Sweat, there was the video of him walking out to practice, and then Brian Callahan said he wasn't at practice. I thought it was funny. Jared goes, we're arguing over whether he can be a 3-down player. He's not even a 2-day player.
Yeah.
You send him out there for 1 day, and he can't practice the next day. Is there any concern that maybe the 2 players with the most quote-unquote red flags that we've talked about, T'Vondre Sweat, L'Jarius Sneed, both of them weren't out there to start OTAs? I'm not saying I'm concerned. I'm just kind of playing devil's advocate here and wanted to get your thoughts. Is there any concern those 2 guys aren't out there with the team right now?
Yes and no. I'll say this, yes and no. No for T'Vondre Sweat due to the fact that, you know, a lot of these young guys that are rookies coming into the league, they're just trying to get their feet under them. And especially for T'Vondre Sweat, obviously the weight is a bit of an issue for him. He's mentioned it in a press conference already with the Titans, saying that he's talked to his nutritionist. They're getting a plan in. Like that's the whole thing there. That's off to the side. Sure, he may have not practiced due to some sort of injury of some regard, but that's neither here nor there. He's getting his feet wet. Injuries, they happen. I think you just got to give him a little bit of grace there. As for L'Jarius Sneed, yeah, I'm a bit concerned about it. You're a veteran in this league. You need to be at OTAs, especially with a new defense, a new offense, new coaches, new everything. You need to be there to understand what is going on in all the meetings. I mean, obviously, I get it. You know, you're easy, you know, formations here and there, plays, whatnot, but you got to be a leader in some regard. And leaders, they show up to OTAs, regardless if they're voluntary or not.
He's supposed to be the cornerstone of this secondary.
Sure.
When I list the secondary of these 3, L'Jarius Sneed, Chidobe Awuzie, Roger McCreary, who do you think is the best? On paper. Sneed. So why aren't you out there? I understand your knees don't work, but come on, man. We got to show some hustle. That's concerning to me as well. I am tired of having a depleted secondary.
Yeah.
I always mix up backfield and
It's
secondary.
the defensive backfield.
Yeah.
It's a back.
But
I'm actually on the opposite end of you guys. I think I would rather him not be out there right now, honestly. I think they said he's in the building.
Right.
They said that he's probably going to be there for minicamp. L'Jarius Sneed, if his knees are iffy, why put him out there for OTAs right now? Sweat does concern me a little bit because the biggest red flag with him is conditioning. And can he stay on the field for X amount of snaps per game and play 50 to 60% of snaps in a game? If he can't even make it through one day of OTAs and then he's rehabbing something the next day, I think Paul Kaharski said that it was precautionary that he wasn't out there. So
Sure.
I get it. We're overreacting. It's May. But I think out of the two, I want to see Sweat out there. He's a rookie, and we have concerns about whether he can stay on the field. For L'Jarius Sneed, honestly, if his knee is kind of in an even if it's 90% healthy,
Right.
I'd say keep him out until he has to be out there.
Well, I mean, at least have him out there in the jersey, no helmet on, and just kind of be a
On a
player's
side
coach.
field or something. Yeah,
be a
I can see
player's
that.
coach in that regard. As for Tavondre Sweat, take him to the sauna room. If y'all are really worried about the weight, take him to the sauna room, man, and you will shed water weight pretty quick.
Let's get him a sweatsuit or something.
Don't torture the guy. No, I'm just let him sit in the sauna for a little bit. Have a regiment that way. I mean, you can only do so much with nutrition. You can only do so much on the field. I mean, if he's taking mental reps with film and looking at the playbook, I think he's fine. I mean, no offense, looking at a defensive lineman that size, you're just going to fill an A gap or a B gap. That's solely what you're there for. You're getting paid to disrupt the offensive line.
To eat up double teams.
Exactly.
Yeah.
As for L'Jarius Sneed, you got to look at coverages. You got to look at slants, posts, corners, all the above. There's a little bit of difference just to the certain profile of each player. That's just how I perceive it.
615-737-1025 is our number. Stillman and Company on this Friday. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt sitting in for Jared today, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership where the buzz is always about great service. We'll continue this conversation next. Again, reacting to the first week of Titans OTAs, what we've seen so far, who hasn't been out there, who has been out there, and much more. We'll continue it up next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman Company, as we bring you into the Memorial Day weekend. Force Company sitting in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. Stillman Company brought to you by Jared Company's Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC division. Call 615-515-1270 or visit jaredcompaniesinc.com. Continuing our talk on Titans OTAs as we wrap up week one, we just kind of talked about some of the guys who weren't out there, maybe some red flags. I want to talk a little bit about who was out there and making a good first impression on his teammates, his coaching staff, and us, the fans. J.C. Latham, I don't think we could have asked for much more from him since he's shown up. I mean, the way he's talked to the media and the clips of him out there with Olga and Bertha. But I thought one of the best signs that we've seen was actually from Brian Callahan's appearance on Bussin' with the Boys this past week, talking about J.C. Latham, and he said he looked out the window one day and saw something very interesting happening out on the practice field.
I think it was cool, though, the other day after the first practice, he struggles with the sled, and it's kind of made him mad. Like, he's a little bit disappointed he couldn't do it the right way right away. Mm-hmm. And so it's like 5 o'clock. They had the rookie mini camp in the morning. This was on Friday. They practice in the morning and they're done. And like about 5 o'clock, I'm sitting in my office and I look outside and JC's out there like running 100-yard sprints. And then he's like moseying down to where the sled's at. And all of a sudden he starts hitting us. He's by himself. And all of a sudden I walk next door. I'm like, Rand, should I stop him? He's like, I'll let him go for a minute and just let him do his thing. And but he's out there in the afternoon mad that he didn't do well enough. Mm-hmm. And he's out there working again. I'm like, that's when you're like, okay, this is the right makeup. Like this guy's
that's
juicy, man.
Yeah. As a head coach, you got to look at that and be like, that's the guy we just drafted. That's an
awesome.
Unbelievable feeling.
Now I know it's early, but hearing that clip, I'm prepared to call J.C. Latham the anti-Isaiah Wilson, because I don't think Isaiah Wilson, based on what we've heard, stayed a second longer than he had to at the Titans practice facility. I really don't. J.C. Latham is out there his first day of work, out there just running 100-yard sprints by himself. That is what I'm going to coin J.C. Latham. He is the anti-Isaiah Wilson. Do I have your guys' votes with that?
It's worth ethic. Worth ethic. I love it. I love it.
I mean, they call him the Trench King for a reason. So, like, he's trying to own up to his nickname. It's just what I'm getting from this, all the audio and this now. I just think, running sprints. Everybody calls you the Trench King. You got to own up to it, dog. You got to own up to it.
You think it's because he listens to this program and it's motivating him?
I wonder if, not specifically Stillman and company, but I'm saying I think he's probably heard the noise about people doubting that he can make that move from right tackle to left tackle, and maybe people being disappointed by the pick. I know I've mentioned on our Saturday show that when J.C. Latham's name was called, my heart kind of sunk because I wanted Brock Bowers or Roma Dunze or even kind of Olu Fashanu or a trade back. J.C. Latham was not at the top of my list when Roger Goodell walked to the podium, but everything that we've seen from him and heard about him since then, I'm excited to see what he does this year. Him and Peter Skoronski on that left side of the line, there's a lot of expectations, so we're kind of setting ourselves up for disappointment. But man, if that's your left side of the line for the next 8 to 10 years, these last two drafts have been supremely successful for Rand Carthon.
Yeah, I guess you could put it as like a success in a roundabout way, but I mean, yeah, on paper, for sure, success. Yeah, I gotta see it.
I know it's early.
Yeah, it is early. I hate to be that guy, but I just gotta see it. I can't go out there and just be like, that's a success. This could obviously come back and crash and burn pretty quick.
Oh yeah.
Or like you're saying, could be a success. I just gotta see it before I can say it.
We got burnt last year with this.
Or them?
Just the Titans fandom in general.
Okay.
We got burnt. Arden Key. We thought he was going to be a great signing.
That is
and
true.
He was going to be a dude, and he's training camp legend. And then what did he do? Maybe stopped a few runs, got a sack or two.
I mean, Traylon Burks too last year. I remember all of the buzz coming out of St. Thomas Sports Park of, man, Traylon Burks looks like a legit wide receiver one, and then he didn't have he didn't have any kind of production like that. So again, it's really early, but early returns on J.C. Latham. I'm really excited. We have a return caller here.
Oh yeah.
Ron is back on our phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ron, excited to have you back on. What you got for us?
Hey guys, what a pleasure! Headed to hot yoga in Brentwood, and I turn on, and I expect to hear some kind of rant, and then my favorite guys, the 4 producers, or whatever you guys are called. It's great.
Ron, what kind of fruit are you eating today? I'm just curious.
What kind of fruit?
Yeah, fruit.
Oh, tomatoes.
All right.
Love it. Love it.
Well, Ron, we're excited to be in. We're glad that we could catch you on your way to hot yoga.
Yeah, hot yoga in Brentwood. I mean, it does wonders for the soul. So go out there for about an hour and sweat a little bit, and then enjoy the weekend.
Tavondre Sweat go with you to hot yoga sometimes, Ron?
Oh no, that's a conundrum. No, this is in Brentwood, and so it's class is sold out. It's been sold out for weeks. But will you guys be on tomorrow?
We will, 9 to 11.
Okay, 9 to 11. And how about the Vanderbilt Commodores?
I know.
Oh, yeah.
I know. We're excited. We'll talk about that a little
Wow.
later on, too. But great week for Tim Corbin and the Vandy boys.
Wow, nobody saw that coming.
No, and, maybe they parlay it into a good regional as well.
Oh, I'm sure they don't bet, so.
I'll tell you right now, I did not see this call coming in today. So appreciate the call, Ron.
Yes, thanks for calling in,
Okay,
Ron.
listen. Look, I'll be out of hot yoga at 5. Y'all still on?
Yeah, we'll be on till 6.
Okay.
All right.
What was that at the end?
I don't know. For those of you who haven't tuned in to our weekend program on Saturdays, Ron is Big Joe Dubin, and he likes to call in and talk about yoga and all sorts of things. So we appreciate the call from Ron. Tune in to Chase and Big Joe 9 to 11 weekdays, Monday through Friday,
Yes.
with Dr. Crane.
Yes, Dr. Crane, Nick Frazier. That is me.
Well, we have more talk on the Titans coming up here. I have a question for the group about, and again, it's hope season. It's sunshine and rainbow season where everything's perfect and everything's fine. So I'm going to ask, if everything ends up being sunshine and rainbows for the Titans, how far can they go? That's up next here on Stillman Company. Force Company sitting in for Jared today here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman Company on this Friday afternoon, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Forrest Company sitting in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. Nashville's best deal of the week is Joyland in East Nashville. Joyland is a fun new concept by Chef Sean Brock, designed to spread joy through his love of cheeseburgers, shakes, buttermilk biscuits, fries, and fried chicken. Get half off a $30 Joyland gift card now while supplies last at thegamenashville.com/deals and enjoy the best burger in town. Still talking Titans here as we've wrapped up week 1 of OTAs over at St. Thomas Sports Park. Guys, I have a question for you here. We've talked a lot about how the Titans are being kind of disrespected by national media, being put towards 28, 29, 30 in the power rankings or wherever they are. But I think the biggest question for this team is, 2 questions, I should say. Is the offensive line going to be serviceable with the changes that they've made, adding J.C. Latham and Lloyd Cushenberry? And will Levis take the next step? So I'll pose this to you like this. Let's say the offensive line is average to above average next year. Say between 13 and 16 as they're ranked across the NFL. And let's say Will Levis takes the next step, not like MVP level next step, but he's a top 15 quarterback. Where does that put the Titans with this roster they have? Because I think those are the 2 biggest questions. Will the offensive line keep Will Levis upright? And can Will Levis step up with the weapons that they've put around him? Where do you think that puts the Titans in the landscape of the NFL?
It puts them at 10-7 on paper, in my opinion. It puts them into a playoff spot. I know that's a very bold statement to make, but if the left side of the line is what everybody keeps talking about, Will Levis's blind side, if you can have that fixed, then you should have a serviceable offensive line. From center to left tackle, you should have a serviceable offensive line, which in result, you have all the assets outside, out wide on Ridley, D-Hop, Burks. That should be a 10-7 season, easy. I mean, as for injury purposes, who knows? But as for Will Levis, if it puts him in a top 15 category as a quarterback, yeah, it should give them a 10-7 season.
I agree. I think it gets them 10-7, 11-6, maybe 12-5. I think they could compete for an AFC South title.
I don't think that's as far-fetched as people outside of Nashville would maybe think it is. Will Levis showed flashes, and we don't know if that's going to be consistent, or maybe we'll see more of the gunslinging, making bad decisions Will Levis that we saw at times last year. But if we see Falcons Will Levis or Dolphins game Will Levis on a more consistent basis, this team it's got the pieces around him. And now on the defensive side, I think you do need to add some depth defensively. There are a lot of spots where it's really thin on the defensive side. Safety, defensive line, inside linebacker. But I look at this team and say, if Will Levis looks like a top half of the league quarterback, there's enough pieces around them to, at the very least, compete with Houston for the AFC South. I would even say that they could win a playoff game. I don't think they're in the same stratosphere as the Chiefs.
No.
Or the Bengals or the Ravens that are favorites to go to the AFC, but go to the AFC Championship, go to the Super Bowl. Mm-hmm. But I think if Will Levis ends up taking that step and solidifying himself as the franchise quarterback, this team could be in that second tier of AFC teams.
Yeah, I just don't want the Titans to get into a situation where they're figuring out, is Will Levis still the guy after this season? Because obviously that means they're going to have to go get another quarterback. Because we all know the Marcus Mariota experiment. They didn't know until about year 4 that he wasn't the guy of the future. And if that's the case where Will Levis shows a lot more signs of flashing in the positive direction after this season, like, hey, maybe this guy is, then you're just thinking as a Titans fan and or just anybody on the outside looking in, this might be another Marcus Mariota situation where you're just like, oh no, go for another quarterback.
I think we'll know by the end of this season.
I don't think so.
Really?
I think if you don't know, then he's not the guy.
Yeah, I agree.
I think it's going to be fool's gold to where the Titans in the front office might think Will Levis is the guy. I have just a weird hunch in my gut or whatever that they might think, yeah, Will Levis is the guy of the future. And then next season ends up having a dud year, and he's like, oh no, now we're stuck in a pickle. Now we got to go find a quarterback in the draft. Then you're stuck with another possible, contract that may not work out.
To me, on paper, this team has more tools for Will Levis than Marcus Mariota's team had when he was, a second-year guy. Marcus Mariota was throwing to
Kendall Wright, Corey Davis,
Delaney Walker,
handing the ball off to
Bishop Sankey.
Yes.
What was it? Dexter McCluster or whatever.
Yep.
Will Levis has more proven guys, and he has more, established guys. He's throwing to arguably a future Hall of Famer in DeAndre Hopkins. He's throwing to a guy who's been kind of out of the loop for a little bit in Calvin Ridley.
But just signed a $100 million contract.
Yeah, he's got money to play for. And then you have a solid slot guy in Tyler Boyd. Plus you're handing the ball off to Tony Pollard and Tajay Spears, who Tony Pollard, I think we saw last year, is not a number one, but he is a running back by committee guy.
What do you always say, Connor, about the Titans?
They are going to tighten.
Exactly. The Titans in this situation are going to tighten. I'm sorry. It's just, I can just see it now. I can picture it. The Titans are going to see that Will Levis is a really good quarterback after this year, and they're like, yes, this is our quarterback of the future. The following season, all these guys that had really good first years as a core wide receiver, as Calvin Ridley, DeAndre Hopkins, Traylon Burks, that whole wide receiver core this year, I could have a really good year one, and then following year two, not going to be as what it was the first year. And then the Titans are going to be stuck in a pickle. That's just how I see it.
Yeah. Again, we have no idea. I mean, it's late May, and the season starts in late August. So we got a while.
I mean, you've been a Titans fan your whole life, Jake. Yeah. Am I saying this,
no,
this out of thin air?
Like I get what you're saying. I think the difference with Will Levis is he was the 33rd pick, not the second overall pick.
Right.
I think with Marcus Mariota, his second year, he showed so much promise, and then he broke his leg. So the next year, you kind of had to be like, well, he's coming back from an injury. I think that was the year he threw like 13 touchdowns and 15 interceptions or something like that. And I think that was when you had seen him in the middle of that second season at an MVP level. I forget what the numbers were, but there was like a 7 or 8 game stretch where he was statistically a top 3 quarterback in the league. Then he broke his leg in Jacksonville. The next year was not great, and then we saw, okay, he's not the guy. I think with Will Levis, the only way I think you don't know with Will Levis is if he gets hurt early in the year. That is the nightmare scenario for the Titans, because then you're probably picking high in the draft, and you haven't gotten a proper look at Will Levis as your starting quarterback. But if he plays through this year and you're kind of like, meh, lukewarm on Will Levis, he's not your guy. You move on.
Yeah, I just don't see it that way. I just see him having a really good year two, and the Titans are going to get fooled. That's the way I see it. I've been watching the Titans since I was a kid. Ian could probably attest to this. Ian, am I illogical of thinking this way?
What, the Titans going to tighten?
Yeah. The fact that they may see a true promise in Will Levis, and they're like, yeah, this is our quarterback of the future. Following year, doesn't have it.
I mean, it could happen, sure. But, I mean, it's got to hope for the best, I suppose.
I think the hope is that because you have Brian Callahan as his coach now.
I think that's a help.
Instead of Mike Mularkey. Was Mularkey the coach in year 2
Yep,
of Marcus Mariota?
I believe so.
Because Wisenhunt got fired midway through year 1.
Yeah.
So I think you're hoping that with this guru coach, as Jared would say, I think that would make you feel better if he has a good year 2, that he will carry that over into year 3. I just think that because he was a second-round pick, not a high top 5 pick, I think that he has to show you this year without any doubt that he is the guy, or you move on.
If I'm Will Levis, you know how you avoid this injury thing? Don't go bulldozing into the defense. Don't be diving for the first down over the entire offensive line. Don't be trying to hit stick a guy with
after
the ball.
You throw a pick.
After you throw a pick. As cool as it is, that's how you get hurt. And that's how you...
Sorry if you guys mentioned this already, but Levis being a second-round pick and what that means for the contract.
Yeah, that is true. You don't have the 5th-year option. That's automatically kind of chunked in there with the first-round pick.
And
so really, he's a free agent after
you'd
this season and 2 more.
You'd have to
So-
extend him after the 2025 season.
So, that kind of accelerates the clock a little bit, unfortunately, when it comes to the evaluation of the quarterback.
Yeah.
And what that does as far as the options,
Right.
And if he is, that means you're automatically re-upping on his money, which he's going to be expensive, assuming
He does.
he's the guy and he does what you guys want him to do or the team wants him to do. And it kind of, it's an interesting kind of situation about how teams want to use the rookie contract with their quarterback versus the teams who are trying to pay their quarterback and what that means for the rest of the roster and where
Yeah.
the Titans are in that kind of weird transition.
You don't want to be in the situation the Jags are in with Trevor Lawrence right now,
Right.
where they think they've got the guy, so they kind of have to pay him, especially because he was the number 1 overall pick.
Mm-hmm.
But then you're sinking $55 million into a guy who has won 1 playoff game and realistically probably shouldn't have even been in that playoff game if the refs decided that Josh Dobbs threw a forward pass, which he did.
And the Titans didn't tighten.
Like the Giants, they paid Daniel Jones a lot of money already.
They had to. Though.
How much do they regret that?
Yeah.
Did they, do that too quickly? Did they have realistic option other than starting over at quarterback?
Right.
And same thing with Miami and Tua.
Yeah.
And you got the one what we just mentioned there, with the Titans. So
I see it this
in
way.
Jacksonville.
With DeAndre Hopkins was on a 2-year deal when they signed him, right? This
Yeah. This is the last year of his deal.
Yeah.
Tyler Boyd, 1 year
One-year
deal.
deal.
You got to look at those two things and you're just thinking, man, if Will Levis does show that he could be a quarterback in the future, that's why I think Titans could be fool's gold with Will Levis. And the fact's like, oh, now we're going to sign Will Levis to a longer term deal. And like Ian's saying, more expensive.
Do you really want to reset the market for a guy that's not the guy? That's the question. If he's the guy, absolutely. Pay him whatever he needs. If he's not, cut him loose.
That's what I'm saying. I don't think he's the guy.
Okay.
And that's why this year is so important. He has to show beyond a shadow of a doubt that he is the guy because, again, like Ian mentioned, he's only got 4 years on his contract and one of them's already down.
True.
And he only played 7 games. So obviously that's the question of the season for the Titans this year. Is Will Levis the guy? We're going to be talking about it for the next 8 months up until the season ends. So I think that is, we talked about it, I think that is the dividing line between the Titans picking in the top 12 again and being a playoff contender. Can Will Levis, with upgraded weapons, with an upgraded offensive line, take that next step and prove that he is the franchise guy? Coming up next, I have a rant that I've been wanting to get off my chest about the Titans, about OTAs, kind of. It was sparked by something that happened this week at practice. I'm going to show off my homerism a little bit, but it is Stillman Company. I got to have a little rant here on this Friday afternoon here before Memorial Day. Be sure to come play golf with 1025 The Game and do some good at the same time. You're invited to the 615 Open, June 20th at Hermitage Golf Course. Come golf with celebrities on a beautiful course with all proceeds going to Souls for Souls, who helps local kids in need. This is going to be so much fun, and I can't wait to see you there. Get more info now at 615open.com. Again, coming up next, I'm going to talk some Titans, give you a little rant about a player who I think is being forgotten about but shouldn't be, and should be given a little bit more hope heading into this season. That's up next. You're on Stillman Company, 1025, 1063 The Game. Tune in to 102.5 The Game this Sunday for coverage of the Coca-Cola 600 at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Coverage begins at 4 o'clock, race starting at 5 p.m. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at thegamenashville.com. Stillman and Company, Forrest Company sitting in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. Guys, I've been waiting for this. And you can join the conversation, too. We're talking Titans, 615-737-1025. Our phone line's driven by Wilson County Hyundai.com. I've been waiting for this. I have a little bit of a rant here about a player that I think is being underrated and being forgotten about, thrown to the curb in some instances. And I will preface this with my bias here. I attended Virginia Tech, and the Tennessee Titans made a first-round draft pick from a player from Virginia Tech a few years back. Caleb Farley, I will preface again with, I get it. The injuries have been terrible. The back, the knees. The best ability is availability, and he has barely been available since his name was read by Roger Goodell. But people who didn't watch him in college don't understand how talented this guy is. He was recruited as a quarterback to Virginia Tech. They moved him to wide receiver. First day of spring camp his freshman year, he tears his ACL. So he missed his whole freshman year. Comes back, they move him to the defensive side of the ball. What does he do in his first game in a night game on Labor Day against Florida State down in Tallahassee?
Probably gets hurt.
3 interceptions.
Oh, wow, look at that.
First game playing cornerback, I want to say ever. I don't think he played corner in high school. He played quarterback in high school. So his first real competition playing cornerback, he picked off Florida State 3 times. 2019, I have never seen a Virginia Tech cornerback lock down a side of the field like he did. And Tech's had some good corners. D'Angelo Hall, Brandon Flowers, Kyle Fuller, Kendall Fuller. 19 receptions allowed, 265 yards, 1 touchdown, 4 interceptions for the entire season. That's all Caleb Farley gave up. He's 6'2", he runs a sub-4 340, and he's 25 years old. Yes, the back injuries, it's been bad. And he didn't play all of last year. He didn't play most of the year before that. I get it. But I think he is being thrown in with Isaiah Wilson instead of Treylon Burks. And I'm not saying he's Treylon Burks level where it's wait and see, but he's not Isaiah Wilson yet. And I understand the injuries, catastrophic. It's been horrible. But if he is healthy, I still believe in the player. I think the talent is there. And I think it should be viewed as a Treylon Burks situation where, hey, he's number 4 or number 5 right now. If we get something out of him, then awesome. And I think it's still there. You guys are welcome to disagree with me.
I just think it's a bad pick from the start. We knew when John Robinson picked him, he had back issues, and he still picked him over corners like, was it JC? Was that JC Horn and all them?
Yeah, J.C. Horn out of South Carolina.
No, Horn was taken before Farley.
That's right.
Yeah,
it was Jalen Johnson, I think.
Yeah.
Unless that was the year after. I don't know.
I don't remember.
Continue.
Anyways, I just think it's a bad pick, and I just don't see how he fits into this new secondary. I mean, Chidobe Awuzie is a better corner. L'Jarius Sneed, if healthy, is by far a better corner. Roger McCreary, the young gun of the group, is a better corner, in my opinion. He's more of a slot corner. I don't know if he can lock down the field like a college Caleb Farley could. But to me, it's just some guys, just the potential is there and it just never translates.
He's only 25 though. That's my point. Is like I get it. The injuries have been bad, but I feel like we're acting like he is bust 100%. I'm saying there's maybe a 5% chance that everybody kind of knows what happened with his dad this past year.
Terrible situation.
Tragic. His house in North Carolina, I believe it was a gas explosion.
Yes.
His father died. His mom also passed away of cancer back in 2018. This guy has been through so much in the past 6 years, and he's still out there. A lot of guys, if all this happened, the injuries, the tragic events with both his parents, a lot of guys would have packed up and taken their $10 million signing bonus or whatever it is and gone home. He's still out there trying to fight for his dream. I understand low chances that he makes an impact, but let's say Chidobe Awuzie goes down. I think he has a chance to take that spot and do something positive with it. Not saying he's an all-pro.
Right.
I'm just saying let's not give up on him making an impact because I feel like people are just throwing him to the side and not even considering him. I'm just telling you, I've seen him at his best, and Caleb Farley can be a legit cornerback.
Yeah, I get it. Also, I do understand why Jake loves the draft because he just riddled off his whole 40 slot, how tall he is, just the whole good draft resume. So I know that he loves the draft now. I can confirm. As for the whole Caleb Farley thing of giving him a chance, he's more in the Traylon Burks conversation than he is the Isaiah Wilson conversation. I'd say it's the mucky middle, and I don't want to be that guy say play both sides of the field here, but it's just a catch-22 situation where you're just like, yeah, he does have the potential to really excel, but he is not Isaiah Wilson bad to the point where he doesn't want to be out there. Like, you could tell Caleb Farley does want to be out there. Like, he does want to excel to the next level, to his game, his own game. So, to a certain degree, yeah, I'd agree with you, Jake. It's just, I don't want to be the guy that just says this, but it comes down to money. Like, obviously, they didn't pick up his fifth-year option. If he does show some signs of improvement, like, what would you offer him? League minimum?
And maybe it doesn't happen with the Titans.
Right.
Maybe he's a camp ad somewhere else. I understand. Somebody on the text line said you're talking about his achievements from 6 years ago in college. I understand that. It's been a long time. He hasn't been out on the field. I am not my rant here is not Caleb Farley is going to be better than L'Jarius Sneed and be your cornerback 1. That is not what I'm saying. I'm saying that if you need a cornerback 4, I still believe in Caleb Farley to be a positive force for the Titans this year if he is fully healthy, which again, it's a big if. It's a big if. I have seen him at his best. He's only 25 years old. There is still some clay to be molded there with him, I think, and maybe Denard Wilson can get that next level out of him because, to be fair, he also wasn't very good when he was on the field a few years ago.
True.
I was in the stadium in Washington when De'Ami Brown burnt him for about a 60-yard touchdown.
Yes.
We do have somebody who wants to chime in on our phone line driven by Wilson County Hyundai. Andy in Columbia, what are your thoughts on Caleb Farley?
Yes, sir. How y'all doing?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, I just want to say thank you for bringing up Caleb. Man, I've been in his court so long. I think he, more than anything, with his speed and with his height, and in high school, he amassed over 10,000 yards and over 58 touchdowns. I think he ought to be playing as either a receiver, as a slot receiver, or even as a kickoff returner, because he's got the speed. It'll be better on his body, and we know he's an athlete. I just think he's playing out of position. I just want to say thank you for bringing him up.
Well, thank you for your call, Andy. Again, as a Virginia Tech graduate, the Titans hadn't taken a Hokie since Vinny Fuller, who I grew up watching. So it was really cool for me. I jumped off the couch when Goodell read Farley's name. I do remember that. I said as they were walking to the podium, I said, "Give me Farley," and he read it, and I was fired up. So
you were
back
me last
injury.
year.
yes, yeah, when they took Will Levis for your Cats,
Yeah.
Back injuries are just so tricky.
I know.
Yes,
and
they are.
there was the talk earlier this year of him saying like it wasn't the back, it was that the back was so bad like it wasn't firing to his legs. But Brian Callahan said this week that he loves what the training staff has done with him. He's been back out on the field for a while now. I'm just saying, don't write him off. Let's see if he makes the 53. I think he can have a positive impact on this team.
To the caller's point, though, like maybe he is out of position. Maybe they need to move him to maybe free safety. I wouldn't say put him on the offensive side of the
and
ball, but
I
wouldn't put him on the offense.
I was thinking about possibly bringing that up. Do you move him to safety?
why not?
I mean, we've seen that move work for a lot of people before. Maybe with the injuries, he can't be a lockdown corner, but I just think the skill is there that he can be an impact player. Maybe it's safety.
Maybe to the caller's point, maybe he's a kick returner. He has the speed,
and the Titans can use
they could use
returners who can catch the ball.
New kickoff format too, so you never know.
Yes,
true.
You could line him up.
Jake
too.
he's rubbing off on me here about this, idea of having Caleb Farley as a useful asset.
I'm showing off my Hokie homerism, but I just wanted to bring it up. who knows how many times we're going to be filling in for one of the weekday shows. I wanted to be a Caleb Farley apologist for 15 minutes, as I wrote on the grid.
Okay.
So there's my rant. Give Caleb Farley a chance. Let's see what he does this offseason and into the 2024 season for the Titans. We'll take a break. We'll come back with hour number 3. Going to talk a little NHL playoffs here. I've loved this year's Stanley Cup playoffs. I think it's been a ton of fun. We're going to talk about that big game 2 coming up with Panthers and Rangers tonight. That is up next. Purchase your tickets now for the Music City Grand Prix at the Nashville Superspeedway Friday, September 13th through Sunday, September 15th at MusicCityGP.com. As the racing station 1025 The Game has a special offer that is for a limited time. Use promo code GAME for a 20% discount now through June 16th. Also, tune in for the Indy 500 race on 1025 The Game this Sunday. Coverage begins at 10 a.m. and is brought to you by Green Trees Company Dispensary, providing high-quality legal THC products. We'll take a break. Be right back here. More Stillman Company on 1025, 1063 The Game.
Want to tell you about Twice Daily. I love Twice Daily, and you will too when you use that made-to-order kiosk or download the app. One or the other. You can order ahead when you download the app. Twice Daily has your cravings, and you can save on every single visit. Stop in and get rewarded. All you need to do is join that Twice Daily Rewards program to unlock special discounts, savings, enter the sweepstakes, and so much more. And they've got great offers on the app as well that I use all the time. Hey, try their new wraps like the Italian, the ham and cheddar, the turkey and Swiss, the Nashville hot chicken. They're made to order with your favorite toppings, and when you download the Twice Daily app, you can order ahead. Or at Twice Daily, it's snack time all the time, and they've got your favorites like chicken fingers, tater rounds, new pretzels, and more. So get into Twice Daily, download that app, do it today. Twice Daily. What are you craving?
Stillman and Company on this Friday afternoon, getting you set for the Memorial Day weekend. Force Company in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. Ian Safar back behind the glass running the show. You can get involved as well on our text line or our phone line, brought to you by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Just talked a lot of Titans in the last hour. Went through pretty much everything we could from OTAs. An exciting first week of OTAs as we see some of the new players the Titans brought in this offseason. Let's get back to hockey for a little bit here. Not Pred specifically, but the NHL playoffs, Stanley Cup playoffs going on right now. You got Dallas and Edmonton, had game one last night. Tonight, Florida trying to take a 2-0 lead on the road in New York after winning 3-0 on Wednesday. I love the way it seems like it's trending that hockey is getting more attention than the NBA. Not from national media. The national media always loves the NBA, ESPN, they're talking NBA all the time. But it feels like among the casual sports fan, they're loving hockey more than basketball. And I've had this thought for a long time that I think the Stanley Cup playoffs are way better than the NBA playoffs. Oh, yeah. And I think people are starting to catch up with that.
Yeah, I think for me, man, it's just growing up, like, in the 2010s, and, like, the NBA was king, you know? Derrick Rose and, you know, Stephen Curry and all that. That was, when I was a kid, that was awesome. And, of course, we had the grit grind Grizzlies and all that. But, you know, Mike Conley and Mark Gasol and that era of Memphis. But I've said it earlier in the show. I will continue to hammer it home. I'm a diehard Kentucky Wildcat. So my heart will always be with college basketball. And to me, man, the NBA now is just so hard to watch. No defense, no, like, the inconsistent foul calls. Hockey, to me, is the most competitive it's ever been. And it's the most exciting it's ever been. And the fans get into it. And, I mean, you see it right now. The 4 teams that are in it have massive fan bases. Maybe the Stars are a little tier below the other 3. But, yeah, man, like, the NHL this year has just been so fun. And some of that is the Preds had a great season, and that gets us all in Nashville excited. But the Preds aren't in it anymore, and I'm still having fun with it. I'm still trying to watch as much NHL playoffs as I can. I'm trying to watch, you know, Connor McDavid score a game winner 38 seconds into double overtime to take down the Stars in game 1, which was awesome last night. But, yeah, man, I'm with you. The NHL is just – it's better than the NBA right now. And I think the national media needs to realize that.
Yeah, I mean, I'll agree to the point that NHL playoffs, the products have been really good, but you have to give the NBA a little credit here due to the fact that you don't really have a face for the NBA playoffs this year.
I was about to say the same thing.
There's no LeBron. There's no Curry. There's no whoever else is out there. No Durant. It's solely Anthony Edwards, Luka Doncic, Kyrie Irving. No, I mean, you could say they're, you know, established names, but they're not your number one guys you're wanting to watch.
There's no Michael Jordans out there.
Right. There's nobody who you tune in and say that's must-see TV.
Right.
I think Anthony Edwards is trending in that direction.
Yeah.
Like, he has been awesome to watch these playoffs and, you know, hilarious post-game interviews and all this stuff. But it is true. Like, 10 years ago, even though, or not quite 10, 8 years ago or so when it was Cavs Warriors 4 years in a row, yeah, we got bored of it because we knew who was going to the finals before the season started. But, man, those LeBron versus Steph and KD games, that was must-see TV. Mm-hmm. You had to tune in to see prime LeBron facing prime Steph Curry with Kevin Durant out there. It just doesn't feel like that anymore. Like, Luka versus Anthony Edwards and Jason Tatum versus Tyrese Halliburton doesn't move the needle as much as it used to.
Yeah, especially with the Pacers being such a small market NBA team, you could say to some degree. Like, I don't know how
like Alonzo Ball kind of thing.
Almost. Yeah, but this is more like slow. Like, he's just starting like here and just letting it. It's not attractive. But like, as for dynasties and such, like you're talking about the Cavs and the Warriors, we knew what was going to happen for those 4-year stints. Whereas now you don't see that. I mean, I think the only way you'd really see a dynasty would have been through the Denver Nuggets, went out from Anthony Edwards. And so now when you take out the giant champions last year, as in the Denver Nuggets, you have to keep an eye on a guy like Anthony Edwards. I mean, everybody's like, oh, Boston has a lot of high expectation. And, like, I try to follow the NBA as much as possible. I'm a Knicks fan to some degree. Obviously, the Pacers beat them. So, I mean, there goes your, I'm following this team, that team. It's really bringing in a lot of ratings, whatever. Nah. Like, as for the NHL, everything is out there. You have really good goaltending. You have your star players, Connor McDavid. Even Matt Duchene has been an absolute just star. And no pun intended there for Dallas Stars, but he's been a star for them.
I will say the one thing I feel the NBA has right now over the NHL is just overall presentation. Like, you have the TNT games, you have Inside the NBA, which is going away
Not
soon.
for long, yeah.
Yeah, which is really sad. I feel like the ESPN NHL announcers are just kind of a step below, like what we used to have with NBC. You had Doc Emmerich and Eddie Olczyk, and obviously Doc retired, and Eddie I think is on TNT now. But yeah, it's the NBA. They make it fun to me. Their presentation is fun. I love tuning in to see what shenanigans Shaq and Charles Barkley and Kenny the Jet and Ernie Johnson are getting themselves into. And then to me, that's almost more entertaining than the actual game. Just watching them rip on each other and all that. But yeah, it's just, I feel like the NHL presentation, like their intermission shows and their pregame and their postgame, it's just very vanilla to me. It's very bland, and they don't have fun. They just kind of read the stats and stuff. And I know we heard Paul Kaharski earlier today was actually arguing against me, saying that's what a pregame show should be. You just learned about the game. I disagree. I think if you want an audience to stick around during your halftime and your postgame, you have to have that. You have to have those guys that are engaging and fun, and Charles Barkley is everything.
Have
every
some
bit of that
shenanigans in there along with the game analysis, like Kenny racing Shaq to the video board. That you're going to go do a highlight breakdown, but there's something fun involved with it too, which that the NBA needs more of that, and it seems like they're about to lose it. So we'll continue this conversation coming up next. 615-737-1025 is our phone number if you want to text or call. Our phone line's driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Stillman Company here on this Friday afternoon ahead of Memorial Day weekend. 1025, 1063 The Game. Stillman Company here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. Fours Company sitting in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. We're talking about the NHL playoffs versus the NBA and kind of the dichotomy of the two, because they go head-to-head every single year, NHL versus NBA, and it felt like the NBA was always more popular. I think that gap is closing. Ian, wanted to get your thoughts on this. I know you're a big hockey guy. It feels to me...
Well, growing up, I'll be honest, I was more of an NBA guy.
Really?
Oh, yeah. I'm also, a I kind of grew up in a more professional sports markets.
Gotcha.
And so I was a big Knicks fan also growing up in the 90s. So I was all about the NBA in the 90s. I loved it, whether it was the Knicks and the Cavs and going up against the Bulls and the Rockets and,
That's a good era.
So, yeah, and even into the late 90s and early 2000s when the Knicks were okay and they had Allen Houston and the Latrell Sprewell kind of reboot. And then after that, I kind of lost. I don't know if it's because there's no team in the market, and I kind of followed hockey too growing up. And I kind of always had a team. But when the Preds came here, there was definitely more of a team to follow. And I think I just gravitated more towards hockey, more towards the Preds, and away from the NBA. So I'd say growing up in the 90s, I was definitely all about the NBA. And then as I've gotten older, I've definitely transitioned more into the Stanley Cup playoffs. And so I watch more of the hockey for sure.
To me, a lot of it just has to do with the format. With the NBA, you get a lot of blowouts in these playoff games.
Yeah.
And hockey, I'm sure there are games that end 4-1, 5-1, but overtime playoff hockey might be the best thing in all of sports. I mean, like last night, Ottinger made a huge save at one point, and they ended up losing as McDavid scored the game winner in double overtime. But sudden death, overtime hockey, where it could mean the difference between you moving on and you going home, it doesn't get better than that. There's nothing like it in all of sports because, football's a little different because possession, like if you get the ball first, blah, 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 all that stuff. Baseball, everybody gets an inning. But hockey, one moment, you're battling for a big win, and one moment later, it's over.
And you see that all the time. One team comes down, like an amazing chance, either nails the post or the goalie makes an amazing save. Other team, right back the other way, boom, score. You see that happen all the time, and especially in the playoffs and overtime. So it's funny how that works.
It's the biggest roller coaster, and I think that I'm having friends who say they don't even know how many players are on the ice in hockey. I had a friend text me and he's like, "How many players are there in hockey? Is it like 11 per team, like the NFL?" I was like, "No, it's not. That would be a crowded rink." But he's been texting me about the playoffs all month long, just saying how much he's loving watching hockey. I think the gap is starting to close, and I think people are starting to see how awesome Stanley Cup playoffs are.
The format to me for the NBA is weird too because they've expanded it now to where back in the 90s it used to be best of 5 and then you'd get into the best of 7 stuff. But now they have every series is best of 7 and then you have the play-in, which I don't think people really fully understand how it works or what the point of it is. Basically, half the league gets into the playoffs, which I think kind of defeats the purpose of the exclusivity and stuff. Whereas the NHL, I feel like it's harder to make a postseason appearance because, what do you have? You have 2 wild card spots and then 4 divisional, not division winners.
It's 16 of the 32 make the playoffs in the NHL.
Yeah.
But in the NBA, 20 of the 30 teams at least make the play-in.
Yeah.
Which is... It's kind of ridiculous. Like the 20th
and then they have
best
draft
team.
Chances.
Yes. Yeah. The Atlanta Hawks were in the play-in, and then they got the first overall pick.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Makes no sense. And to the point of that is you're just sitting there. What's the point of a regular season? Like if you're gonna have 20 out of the 30 teams have a playoff chance, might as well just scrap half the season and condense it. And then I think this year the NBA tested that in-league tournament or whatever it was.
Yeah.
which was such a TV
It was terrible.
grab to
Yeah.
me. I didn't like that at all. But you know who wins that? LeBron won that. But that's
And it
either
was
him-
weird. It's like even the Knicks and the Pacers were playing in the playoffs this year, you know?
Yeah.
And that was like the huge rival when I was a kid. And, you know, as a Knicks fan, I hated the Pacers and Reggie Miller, and it was always Rick Smits and Davis, Antonio Davis, and one other Davis, too. I can't remember. Dale Davis, maybe?
Yeah.
And it was just like, and I couldn't get into this series. This past series, the Knicks and the Pacers, like I thought I would. And I just found myself gravitated more towards the hockey. So, I don't know. Maybe it's just the mindset that I've had as I've gotten older. Not sure.
You make a point, though, Ian. Like, the NBA playoffs this year for just Jalen Brunson either dropping 40 points and then, you know, the Knicks winning that game by 12 or 15 or whatever it may be. And then after that, you go, it's all home game advantage. That's all it was. Each team, when they went back to their home court, they won the game by 20 or 30 points.
How much of this is sorry?
No, go ahead.
How much of this is market value too? Because you look at the 4 teams left in the NBA. Celtics are a big market. The Mavericks, not so much.
And
The
then Timberwolves and
absolutely
Pacers.
not. Pacers, maybe. And then you look at the teams in the NHL. I mean, the Rangers are a huge market. The Edmonton Oilers are a huge market because it's Canada, and that's what they have up there. The Stars, I mean, are trending upward, and then the Panthers, I mean, kind of. But Florida is not really a hockey state. When I think of Florida,
But they've gotten more of a following because they've been making runs. Like they won the President's Cup a few years ago, and then made the run to the Stanley Cup Finals. So, I thought I had a thought on the NBA where everyone was saying, "Man, the NBA wants Boston, New York in the Eastern Conference Finals," and probably because just
it's money.
Volume of people in New York City, you're going to get more people tuning in, but that wouldn't move the needle for the casual fan, I don't think. And I hear people saying the NBA dreads a Minnesota-Indiana NBA Finals. Does it really?
Probably. Yeah.
I mean, probably, but it doesn't change it for me at all. And maybe that's because I'm not in Boston or Dallas, but
Doesn't make anybody more or less likely to watch?
That's what I'm saying. Is
I would think so, maybe.
If
it's just pure numbers.
I think there are more Celtics and Mavericks fans.
Yeah, that's for sure.
But the casual fan, do I care if I'm watching Minnesota, Indiana, or Dallas, Boston?
I don't know. It's a good question.
Like, I will say for an NBA perspective, I'm assuming at this point, if Boston and New York both met up in the conference final, it would tap into the new era of basketball fans. And then also, because of the name and the weight it carries, it would tap into that older demographic that used to watch back in the 80s and 90s. Like, oh, the Knicks and the Boston Celtics. This is incredible. 2 of the high-profile franchises back at their peak again. And then sure enough, you tap into both demographics. And then sure enough, you're back at it. Then you're getting in a big audience.
To me, ultimately, it just comes down to the game. I just find the NBA has become lazy. Like, just the flow of the game. It's the same thing. It's ISO ball, pass it around, shoot the 3, it goes in because no one's covering. That's how you get all these blowout games, because one team doesn't know how to defend the 3 ball and the other one just isn't being defended, so they knock them down. That's just, to me, that's what it comes down to.
The Pacers, I think, are like the perfect example of that. They play absolutely no defense, but they score like 135 points per game. So it doesn't matter. 615-737-1025 is our number. You can chime in on our text or phone lines, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. When we come back, we're going to finish up the hockey talk. One more thought on the Preds. And there's been a lot of talk about Mitch Marner and possibly a trade, bringing him, maybe a swap with UC Saros. But what if you don't have to send Saros? We're going to talk about that next here on Stillman and Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
In a trade with Toronto, would it have to include UC Saros?
I don't think it has to. No. I could see Toronto being interested in a player like Saros, but they'll be in the same boat. They'll have to do a contract negotiation as well. I mean, you guys know that. I have to think that Toronto wants to solve its goaltender issue, and so I think Saros would absolutely be a target of theirs. But I think it's wrong to say it would have to be Saros. Like, if Toronto doesn't think that what Saros is asking for is worth it, then maybe they say no, or maybe they have to go in another direction.
Elliot Friedman from Sportsnet on Caroline Willie and D-Mace earlier this week talking about, hey, if the Preds want Mitch Marner and they go make a trade, does it have to include UC Saros? Could there be another package where you get Marner to Nashville and keep UC Saros? He said, maybe. There's a package out there. And I think if the Preds want to go for it, that's probably their best way to do it. You keep the goalie, you get your elite goal scorer, but what would that package look like?
I mean, I think you have to keep Saros at this point. Barry Trotz has basically gone on record on this station and said, we're keeping, or Askarov's not ready. Eventually, they're going to have to pick between the two. That's what we learned the other day. But right now, in this very moment, I think UC Saros is the goaltender for the Nashville Predators, and he should remain that way. So the question is, do you package some of these second-round picks or these firsts or whatever? Like we talked about earlier, Frazier, those picks, can you send them over to Toronto or someone else to bring in a top 6 forward or a goal scorer or someone like that?
I'm trying to think in a logical term of, yes, it is possible, but at the same time, there is that other possibility where you could see a Saros go to Toronto in a possible trade for Marner. Just due to the fact that Toronto, they're kind of in shambles for the most part. Obviously, yeah, they hire a new coach and whatnot, but goaltending, I mean, that's kind of every team in any sport, you want to build out of the back to the top. That's kind of what it is. And financially, Preds can hold on to Saros if they want. They didn't, like I was saying earlier, the whole Ryan McDonough thing, letting him go and not letting him go, but trading him to Tampa and whatnot with the money. There was already enough money to sign UC Saros. So the fact of the matter is it possible, like Elliot Friedman was saying in that clip, is it possible to hold on to Saros and get Marner as well? I think it is very doable. I think it's more than doable. I think it's achievable, like easily achievable.
I saw a Toronto fan put out a trade package for Mitch Marner, and it made me laugh because I think we all do this with our teams. You think you can get more than what the market value is. This Toronto fan said, Mitch Marner to the Preds for UC Saros, Phil Tomasino, Luke Evangelista, Dante Fabro, and a first-round pick.
Are we playing a video game? Wait a minute.
That does kind of sound like more like a video game thing.
I know.
Just throw them in there.
It's on rookie.
I was like, maybe like a package of 2 of those things instead of all 5 of them.
Yeah. And that's when you get into issues and trouble with trading, especially like high-profile players like Marner.
Right.
Is like, what's the value? And who values what more? And you get into all this, well, he was a top 5 pick, so his value should be this, even though he hasn't been living up to it, or his production, he puts up 100 points, 90 points every season.
Right.
So, like, those are legit guys, and it's kind of like this, but how much is it his surrounding cast? On the power play, when you have Matthews and Nylander surrounding you, kind of put up those points. There was that big question about Jake Gensel this year at the trade deadline because he'd been playing with Sidney Crosby his entire career. He goes to Carolina in the trade deadline and does fine. He does more than fine, does very well for Carolina. So there's questions about Marner and whether or not he can put up those points when he's not surrounded by a Matthews and a Nylander and Tavares and all that kind of stuff. And if he were to come here, sure, he would still have Forsberg and Yossi, but it's not, not quite the same.
Right.
That is a good point. Is Mitch Marner a product of having better options around him and maybe he gets better matchups, or can he be the guy if plugged in? You can chime in as well on our text line or our phone line. Force Company filling in for Jared today. Mike in Nashville on our text line, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, says Marner does not provide $12 million value to the Preds, which that is a good point. He's expensive too. Ryan in Nashville has a pretty similar thought. Preds need to stay away from Marner. Preds need players who can score and not just pass the puck. I think that is a good point from Ryan and Mike. Is he worth $12 million plus whatever you would have to trade for him, whether that's UC Saros or a big package of prospects and picks? Is Mitch Marner the difference between you being a fringe playoff team like you were this year and a Stanley Cup playoff or a Stanley Cup final contender?
And I'm interested to see what Toronto would want back.
Yeah.
You know, like what kind of roster pieces? Do they want defensemen? Do they want goalie? You know, that's like their biggest need, so they say, but can they afford to pay a goalie a lot of money when they're already paying Tavares, Matthews, and Nylander a lot of money? I mean, they would have less money on the, in the books because you got rid of Marner, but how does that mess with their roster construction and how much do they want to spend on their goalie? So what Toronto wants back, is an interesting situation here.
And another thing, I heard Chase talk about this earlier. How much of the culture does Mitch Marner fit? I mean, you look at the things going on between him and the Toronto fan base. They hate each other. So we think. I mean, the Toronto fans want him out. Do you think Mitch Marner claps back? And what happens when he gets here, doesn't perform, and the Preds fans want him out? Does he fit the culture that Barry Trotz is trying to instill in this program? Like it's a college football team. No, this franchise.
That is something Jared always says. He says it for the NFL, but I think this was something Floyd used to say, that there are only 3 reasons a guy's available. Either he's a bad player, a bad dude, or he's injured all the time. If Mitch Marner is being waved out there on the trade block, there's a reason that Toronto doesn't want to keep him.
Right. And that's another thing is everybody that's in that Toronto market's like, oh, we could fleece the Preds in a roundabout way in a trade. Just kind of like how the Preds kind of, I wouldn't say fleeced Tampa Bay, but everything. And you could generously say the Preds have kind of fleeced Tampa Bay for their draft picks for the most part. And I've already said it now in the show a couple hours ago. Use your draft picks you have to get a guy like Marner or another guy like Gensel or whatever. I mean, Gensel's free. Going into the offseason, whatever. But, just use them. If it's not Marner, go after somebody else.
Yeah, and could you go get a guy on the open market who going to cost you the same, if not a little less than Mitch Marner, and you don't have to throw the draft capital? This is kind of the same conversation we had with the Titans about Calvin Ridley versus T. Higgins.
Right.
Higgins is a little younger, maybe a little bit better player, but you're paying them the same amount, and you don't have to give up this second-round pick or whatever it would have taken to go get T. Higgins. Caller on our phone line here, driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. Ryan in Nashville checking in on free agency.
Hey, guys. Heard you guys talking before about players of free agency. Honestly, if I would say scratch the Marner, for the amount you're going to give up on Marner, why don't you just call Carolina and go get Marty Natchez? He's proven he can be a goal scorer. He's proven he gets to the front of the net. He makes plays. He doesn't cry in the playoffs and disappears in the playoffs like Marner does. And on top of that, if depending on what Trotz wants to do, honestly, I would be interested to see if the Preds would go after Kuznetsov, like there was talks about during trade deadline. Kuzi had his best years when Trotz was his head coach. I would love to see what Kuzi can do under Bruno's system as Trotz is his GM.
Thanks for the call, Ryan. That is a really good point. I grew up a Washington Capitals fan and watched that cup run. I was actually at the parade after they won it and saw Kuzi doing his Eagle celebration on one of the buses. That's a really good point. Kuznetsov, he was let go by the Caps, ended up in Carolina, and he made an impact down the stretch. Maybe you bring him back in, and there's that obvious connection with Barry Trotz.
Yeah, it could fit a culture thing for Barry Trotz as well. He's been big on the culture for the most part, bringing in core pillar guys to kind of set the standard. And hey, if you know somebody that's familiar with what you're talking about, then sure, bring in a guy like that.
And don't hate the Marty Natchez, idea. He's young. He's 25. He'll turn 26 next season, but he is a restricted free agent.
Gotcha.
So he won't be UFA. So Carolina will have some control. He's eligible for arbitration. So he signed a little bridge deal, a two year 3 per. So it was 2 for 6. So he's a little bit of a restricted free agent. So that should be interesting. And they don't really do offer sheets like they used to. So there's a little wrinkle there.
If Carolina was going to blow that up, which I honestly don't really see them doing it, I feel like that's the piece they would keep. Marty Natchez.
Yeah.
He's young.
Yeah, but also, I mean, Ian makes a good point to the fact that, looking at Natchez's points here, 53 points this past season, not too bad as a 25-year-old. And then you add that he's an RFA. I mean, why would Carolina not want to negotiate something to the fact? Because they got to blow it up, right? I mean, that team, they can't hold on to everybody.
Yeah. I think those guys, some of their guys are costing too much for the same result.
That's what I'm saying. Like, you're going to have to blow it up. You can't keep everybody.
Right.
And this is what we've been talking about. The Preds have the resources to go get some players who are still at the top of their game, but maybe available because of the circumstances of other teams. You've got all the draft capital. You've got all this salary cap room. So Barry Trotz, the world is your oyster.
I will harp this until maybe Roman Yossi retires or Philip Forsberg retires. I don't know. But like I was telling Connor earlier, you have some youth in Milwaukee. To keep developing it. Bring in some core established names that are going to put up 50 points. I know that sounds pretty just outlandish for me to say like that. But if you can do that and have them as core pillar guys, bring in the youth, I mean, it's as simple as you can get. Obviously, I'm just playing, pick this and that here and there, but you got to do it.
615.
Don't need draft picks.
615-737-1025 is our phone number. Sorry for interrupting.
No, I'm just frustrated with the draft picks. You don't need them. You just don't need them.
If you want to hear the whole rant from Nick on the draft picks, that's going to be posted on the podcast as well, so you can tune in there. Stillman Company brought to you by Jared Company's Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC Division. Call 615-515-1270 or visit jarrettcompaniesinc.com. Coming up next, really big news the other day in the NCAA, and actually might have been last night, that schools can now pay players directly. Changes the whole landscape of college sports. We're going to talk about that coming up next. Force Company in for Jared today here on Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Tune into 102.5 The Game tomorrow as the Nashville Cats take on the Orlando Predators on the road. Pre-game at 5:30, kickoff at 6 p.m. Coverage also available on the 102.5 The Game app and at theGameNashville.com. Cats football coverage presented by Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning. Force Company in for Jared today on Stillman and Company. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, and Connor Newt. Do want to remind you, you can hear us 2 more times on this Memorial Day weekend. Tomorrow, 9 to 11, we'll have our normal show, and then a special Memorial Day edition on Monday from 11 to 2:30. Wrapping up hour number 3 here, guys. Just want to quickly hit on this. I believe this was yesterday when the decision came down. Yes, it was last night. The House versus NCAA case that was looking at antitrust cases ended up basically saying that schools can pay players directly. And the NCAA is going to pay more than $2.7 billion worth of back damages to players over the last 10 years as well. Basically just changing the landscape of college athletics forever. I had one of my uncles texted in a group chat with my family last night saying he is done with college sports basically after this. Because he said it's not college sports anymore. It's pro sports. Really big decision, and now we are really seeing the wild, wild west that started with NIL, and now we're here.
Yeah, I think we've reached the point in college sports, especially in college football, where it's driven so much fandom to televisions around the U.S. tailgating. It just brings a different meaning now. I mean, I was mentioning this to Chase and McJoe earlier this week, and I think Joe is the one that brought this up on the air about incentivizing NIL deals. But like at this point, when you have this situation of just paying outright, the love of the game just kind of goes away. You don't get the true discipline of from a true coach of saying, hey, this is XYZ. Now you're going to have financial management classes. You're going to have financial whatever involved. I mean, it's gotten out of hand. This is probably, I guess you could say, the pinnacle of the NCAA's downfall. I mean, would you say that might be it?
I wouldn't say downfall. It's still college football to me. There's still those traditions. There's still.
I'm talking about NCAA in general.
No. I am not on board with this decision. I'm just saying, it is very much becoming pro sports. It is very much money driven now. And
it is pro sports. Man.
Yeah, it's
unfortunately.
But I mean, it's still college football. It's still college basketball. Still college athletics to me, and it's always going to be that to me. There's always going to be those traditions and stuff, but what you're going to see is these Power 5 schools. They're going to compile more money into these top recruits, and it's going to be more top heavy. I feel like that and realignment is going to become more of a thing. You're going to see more, I don't know, UCLA, for example, is joining the Big Ten. You're going to see those conferences that don't make sense, and that's just the reality of the world we live in, unfortunately. And I'm not a fan of it, but I mean, it is what it is.
I get what you're saying, though, Frazier. I think we could see there's kind of been this rumor of maybe the SEC and the Big Ten splitting off from the NCAA and making their college football super league or whatever they're going to call it, where they just play each other and do their own playoffs and they can pay their players whatever they want. Now that looks more possible that we could be trending in that direction, and there's not much the NCAA can do at this point to hold on to those schools because they have all the control.
Yeah, I mean, what this is essentially to me of them having to pay $2.7 billion is saying, hey, here's a note, $2.7 billion, we're going to pay all that out to all these former athletes, and then wipe their hands away, and they have nothing else to do. They can't do anything about any other teams or universities that want to break away from the NCAA. That's it. They're going. They're gone. NCAA is saying, well, we're just going to be left in the past. We're going to sit next to all the dust bunnies on the desk.
What does that mean for NIL deals then? Does that mean more come in or less come in?
I mean, it doesn't matter at that point. It's truly based off of that certain athlete, or at this point, professional athlete in college football, and it's also based off their agent they probably hire, and then the small cut that probably goes to university.
Well, and I think the NIL deals right now, was it Jaden Rashada who's suing Florida?
Yeah.
For almost $14 million in NIL deals. That isn't the local car dealership offering him for no. There are boosters paying money. Now they just don't have to hide it as NIL deals.
Exactly.
And I hate it because now my college football 25 dynasty at Wyoming. I'm just going to get all of my big recruits stolen away because the Cowboys don't have enough money.
You decommitted?
I decommitted. I have committed to Wyoming. Did I not say that?
No, you didn't. No.
Yeah, July 15th or whenever the early access starts. Wyoming. We're heading out all the way out there to the Mountain West.
Verbal commitment still with SMU. I'm still waiting to put pen to paper. Let's put that out there.
I've already put pen to paper, man.
Kentucky.
Yeah, we got to ride with the Cats. I mean, we can do this all day, and you guys can tell me I'm chalk for playing with my favorite team.
You're chalk, dog.
Yeah, well, it is what it is.
Well, certainly a landmark decision, and I'm sure we will be feeling the after effects of this for years to come. 615-737-1025 is our phone number. You can get involved on our text or phone lines driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. When we come back, we'll start up our final hour. NFL meetings were here in Nashville, and the commissioner had some very interesting things to say about Nashville, the new stadium, and much more. We'll get into that coming up next. Force Company in for Jared here on Stillman Company on this Friday afternoon, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Stillman Company, final hour here on this Friday afternoon. Ford's Company in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt, Ian Safar, broadcasting from the Busy Bee Plumbing, Heating, and Air Conditioning Game Nashville Studios, home of the $99 yearly Beehive membership, where the buzz is always about great service. 3 hours down, gentlemen. Filling in here for Jared as he gets a head start on this holiday weekend. We haven't talked about kind of a big story in the market this week. The NFL meetings were here in Nashville. And Roger Goodell, he spoke earlier this week talking about a lot of different things. 18-game schedule possibilities. The draft in 2026 was awarded to Pittsburgh. But he was also asked about the possibility of a Super Bowl being played here in Nashville. Here's what he had to say.
It was great to see the stadium and what they're envisioned. We've seen plans before, but you see it come to life a little bit more. I think the stadium is going to be amazing. We know the passion of the fans here. We experienced the draft here. And I think a Super Bowl here would be very successful, but we'll get to that once we get a little further down the line with the stadium.
So it's going to be a while away. You would think stadium opens 2027, probably 2029 would be ballpark for a Super Bowl here, but something that maybe no one thought would be possible a while ago. Now with the Dome Stadium, chance we see the biggest event in American sports make its way here to the Music City.
Man, when and if that happens, Nashville will be just packed. And Ian went on his little grumpy old man rant earlier. I will go on mine right now. I despise the amount of traffic in Nashville, especially downtown. I try not to go downtown at like any time of the day, but if I have to go, it is a brutal, brutal drive for me. But yes, back to the football aspect of it, phenomenal. It'd be great. Love to see the Super Bowl here. It'd be awesome.
It'd be good exposure for the city. You got to think, too, with this stadium, you're not just going to get a Super Bowl. You're going to bring in, a Final Four. You're going to bring in a football national championship. You're going to bring in a WrestleMania or a bigger concerts and stuff like that. But yes, it will. Say goodbye to nice parking and don't tell anyone about the Music City Center because that's my space.
You just said it, man.
Well, my bad.
Yeah.
I mean, we saw the draft and all that brought in, and they had the whole draft experience across the way in the Nissan Stadium parking lot. Nashville did it up for the draft. I can only imagine what this city would look like if a Super Bowl came here. And it seemed like a pipe dream a few years ago to have a host team in the Super Bowl, but we saw it 2 years in a row, including SoFi Stadium in its first year, its first Super Bowl.
Right.
Rams getting there. Who knows?
It's true.
Imagine this city if the Titans played in the Super Bowl in the first one here in Nashville.
I'd cry. I'd just wail away.
I know we're getting ahead of ourselves.
It's okay. I mean, it's good to think that way. I mean, I'm trying to visualize this right now is that when the Preds went on their Stanley Cup run in 2017, downtown Nashville was blocked off in every fashion of the way. You see these little horses, they call them horses, the wood little horses, block off the roads. Yeah, it was everywhere. So I can only imagine what it's like with football. Football is one of the top sports in America, honestly. So if that were to happen, if it's Columbia blue, Titan dark blue, red, white, whatever it may be, silver, this town will be electric if the Titans were to go to the Super Bowl and host it. That'd be kind of neat.
Think about this. It'll be like, how packed the downtown scene gets around end of February, early March. SEC tournament rolls into town in Bridgestone.
Oh, boy.
That bar scene is crazy. If we bring in a Super Bowl here, it will be that times 100. It will be electric, but it'll be like a cicada invasion right now.
Well, I mean, think about even when there's a big concert in town, like Morgan Wallen, it was packed, especially with the Preds game going on at the same time too. I still remember from last year, I went and called a Middle Tennessee State Series down in Dallas, and we came back the Sunday night that Taylor Swift's concert got rained into the early hours of the morning. Mm-hmm. So we got back at like 2 a.m. It took me an hour to get an Uber because everybody downtown was stealing all the Ubers because of the Taylor Swift concert. So, I mean, like you said, Connor, imagine that times 10, 15 if we get a Final Four or a Super Bowl here. Better start working on the traffic now in order to prepare for that.
I mean, you're talking people from all over the world almost.
Yes.
And plus you have all these celebrities that come in that have their own escorts and their own routes they take. You're going to block off roads that way, and that's going to create more traffic because everyone's going the exact same way, and it's going to be a nightmare. It'll be great exposure for our city and how much it's grown over the years. Like, think about 20 years ago. I wasn't around yet, but think about 20 years ago, we didn't have all this. We didn't.
True.
I mean, we did, but we didn't have the Titans to the scale we have the Titans today. Yeah. We didn't have the Nashville Predators to the scale we have the Nashville Preds today.
The Music City Center. It was a parking lot, a legit parking lot.
Yep.
I do recall that.
Yeah.
So, I don't know. What are your thoughts about this new stadium, Jake?
I will make a bold prediction based on what we've seen the last couple of days.
Okay.
So they opened up the Titans house thing where you can kind of see the designs that went into the new stadium and all that stuff. And they released a time lapse of when it's going to be ready. And I think they said February of 2027, right around there. Yeah. I will make a bold prediction. They just announced the 2026 NFL draft is in Pittsburgh. 2027, it comes back to Nashville.
You think so?
I think that it's the perfect time. The Titans can show off the new stadium right after it's finished. If it's finished in February and you get the whole NFL world coming here in April, what better way to show off your new multi-billion-dollar stadium than the NFL draft 2 months after it's finished?
They hit those stadiums with the Super Bowl really fast too.
They do.
Like last year was Allegiant Stadium, and that opened
2 years ago,
3 years ago. Yeah. And then it was either a year before or a few years. It was SoFi with the Bengals and the Rams, and that had just opened, and they're really quick with it. So I would expect, not that I'm an expert or anything, but I would expect if we're open by 27, we may have a Super Bowl here by 28, 29.
Yeah. I'm just thinking 2019 was the first draft here. 8 years, I feel like, is enough time in between to let other places get it. But if any city is going to get a second NFL draft, I think it's got to be Nashville after the show they put on back in 2019. So it'll be Green Bay in 2025, Pittsburgh in 2026. I will make the prediction. I think 2027, it's coming back to Nashville, and they'll be able to show off the new stadium across the Cumberland from Broadway. So excited for that. Excited for a possible Super Bowl here. We're going to keep talking NFL meetings coming up after this. You can jump in as well on our phone or text line driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com, 615-737-1025. We're going to talk about the possibility of an 18-game schedule. Roger Goodell talked about it a little bit this week here in Nashville. Is it a good idea? And how long until we possibly see that extra game added on? That's up next here on Stillman & Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Let's talk about Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey. That's right. It is a holiday weekend, and I know that holiday weekends mean partying, celebrations, barbecues, hangouts by the pool, trips out on the lake, time over with the... Make sure you have Fireball Whiskey. Fireball Whiskey goes down so smooth and it tastes so great. There is no better way to ignite the night and to celebrate the beginning of summer than with summer's official drink. That's right. I'm telling you, Fireball Whiskey, it's summer's official drink. Ignite the night. Please do responsibly and be 21 years or older to enjoy. That's Fireball Cinnamon Whiskey.
Stillman Company taking you into your Memorial Day weekend. Forrest Company in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt. If you haven't had enough of us yet, you can hear us tomorrow morning as well, 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. And then on Monday, a special Memorial Day edition from 11 to 2:30. But this is Stillman Company, brought to you by Jarrett Company's Fire and Commercial Plumbing HVAC division. Call 615-515-1270 or visit jarrettcompaniesinc.com. Before the break, we were talking a little bit about the NFL meetings here in Nashville this week. Talked about Roger Goodell talking about the possibility of a Super Bowl down the road here in Nashville once the new stadium is built. He also talked about the possibility of an 18-game schedule. And this is just, correct me if I'm wrong, 3 years removed from going to 17, I believe, two or three. Yeah. So I know that this is the NFL as an organization always wants more football. They can sell it to more streaming providers, as we've seen with Netflix and Amazon Prime and Peacock all getting involved. But is it smart to go to 18 games? These guys are already getting a lot of wear and tear on their body. I know they say they'd add another bye week, but is it smart to extend the season even further with playoffs after that? You're going to be playing into mid-February at that point.
I'm not a fan of that. I just feel like you don't want to – football we only get for a certain amount of time. This is my beef with all leagues. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew, you know? You don't want to force feed more of something you think you like because eventually you'll get sick of it. You know? You're basically extending your season by what? 2 weeks? Because you would have to add a second bye week in. It just doesn't make sense to me. I know it's a money thing and everything's money driven and, you know, capitalism and all that, but like I just don't see the point in it, you know? I don't know.
I see the I guess, approach Roger Goodell is trying to have. I believe he did say this on the Pat McAfee show. He's not a big fan of the preseason. So he's wanting to get rid of these preseason games and turn them into regular season games. But from my perspective, I think this just resets the NFL market for players, like in general, due to the fact that you add another game. So that kind of makes the contract like, hey, man, I'm getting paid $2.5 million here for a 17-game season. Or if you change it to an 18-game season the following year, I want to re-up my deal in a different way. I want to renegotiate. I signed up for a $2.5 million deal just out of the thin air. Sign up for a $2.5 million deal for a 17-game season, not an 18-game season. So if you're wanting to tell me that we're not going to have only one bye week in 18 games, no thanks. I'm out.
I think it would have to be 2 bye weeks. And even Roger Goodell this week, when asked about it, he didn't say this is imminent. He didn't say maybe next year. He said long term, there's thought to possibly expanding the schedule. But, and I also agree with you, I'm not a huge fan of the preseason. I think that 4 games was definitely too much. I think 3 is probably about right because the bottom end of the schedule of the roster for all these teams, it's important for them to get these preseason games to prove their worth and try and earn a job. Maybe not with the team that they're with, but it's an audition for all 32 teams. So if you go down to 2 preseason games, that's one less chance for these undrafted free agents, these lower round draft picks, to get themselves jobs on NFL rosters. So I think that's another factor in it. But I think eventually we're going to go to 18, right? Like yeah. We talked about it when we were at 16 that eventually they were going to expand. They went to 17. I think 17, everybody kind of knows it's a stepping stone to eventually get to 18. It's just about how and when they end up doing it.
Yeah, and I also mentioned this to you when we first started doing the weekend show, the Force Company, about the UFL being involved in some degree with the NFL. So this leads me to my point of if you're going to do an 18-week season, 18-game season, say you have 2 bye weeks. And say if some of those undrafted guys don't get their chance in the preseason, and Chase McJoe, I believe, mentioned this as adding players that don't get drafted, but also have the rights to, let's say, the Titans were to sign, I don't know, Joe Schmo from Louisiana Tech, and he's a defensive end but didn't make the practice squad for the Titans, right? Say if they have his contract rights, send him down to the UFL, gets about 3 to 4 games in under his belt in the UFL, and Titans like, oh, yeah, maybe this guy actually does have a shot of playing for us if somebody gets hurt down the line. Bring him up practice squad. From there, then go on to the top line roster and go from there. So maybe that's an option. But, I mean, if you're going to, add an extra game to the season, you're going to have to expand the rosters, the game day rosters. You're going to have to look at the money involved with it for players like I mentioned earlier. I mean, there's a lot. Like you said, it's down the line for sure, a pipe dream in a roundabout way. But they're going to have to put all that in consideration.
I just don't understand why we, as people in sports, feel the need to constantly expand things. Between this and then, like, you look at college football, we haven't even had a 12-team playoff yet, and now we're already expanding to 14 next year, or is it 2 years from now? Something like that. But it doesn't make sense to me. Why can't we just leave things the way they are? I sound like Big Joe right now.
Because there's always more money to be made, Connor.
Yeah, that is true.
They're all just trying to make that extra money.
Yep.
Bingo.
Those extra games, who they going to sell the 18th week to? Is that a stream? You get extra money for a streaming game.
Right.
You get extra money from the TV contracts.
Yes.
Everybody gets extra money. And so same thing with the college football playoff. They all want the money. They want to sell the TV rights. They want to sell, get the TV money for that. So, it's not going to stop until they find some type of, reduced, I guess, money that they're getting back. I'm trying to find the right word, but until they, see diminishing returns and all this kind of stuff, there's no slowing it down.
They haven't seen the peak yet.
Right.
So you add another game, you make more money. All right, let's add another game.
I
see
mean,
what
people
happens.
will watch. We'll all watch it.
Yeah.
And we'll all play our fantasy, and we'll all play our DFS, and we'll all put our extra bets on.
Right.
And so it's just one more game, and everyone will watch. And especially if you take away a preseason game.
True.
That is true.
They'll take away at least one preseason game, and they'll add a regular season game. I don't.
That is a good point, Ian. That we can talk about all we want about how it's a bad idea.
So the season could start a week earlier.
Yeah, on Labor Day weekend, and then the Super Bowl. If you add another bye week, it would end on President's Day weekend.
So it tweak it a little bit, but if you took away a preseason game and just moved everything up a little bit, it wouldn't be the end of the world. I do think that a second bye week would probably be helpful if you threw in the 18 games, just because one bye week seems a bit extreme, especially early on. Imagine if you had an 18-game schedule, you're the Titans, and you have a bye week, week 5, and you have to play however many straight
14 straight games
to end the season. that's
you'd have to slip in a bye week, week 12 or something like that. Yeah.
So it would take a little bit of an adjustment, but they'll make it happen.
So then would you prioritize, I guess, the way schedules are made to have more of your, I guess you could backload all of your division games in the back of your schedule and have a bye
Well, that's
weeks?
what they're doing it now, pretty
yeah.
much. They're pretty much, backloading the conference schedule, division schedules for most teams now.
Yeah, Titans have, 5 of their last 7 games are division games?
Yep.
Right. So would you put a second bye week in between one of those games and then add another bye week in the first 2 or 3, 4 weeks into the season? And then do you add another international game? That's another thing.
Well, they're going to keep adding those. We've already seen they expanded Germany and now Brazil, and I'm sure that is not going to stop. We're going to keep getting more countries involved, and there's going to be more games in London, and maybe the Jaguars eventually move to London, and all that is going to happen. But it would take some adjusting for sure if they went to the 18-game schedule. But I do remember when they said they were moving to 17, and I was just thinking in my head, it's going to be so weird to talk about record predictions and say 9-8 or 10-7 instead of 8-8 and 9-7. And now it feels normal. It's already kind of adjusted. I'm sure it's going to happen. Everybody's going to say, I don't know about this. And 2 years later, we'll all be used to it. And the NFL will add an extra 17th of their money on top of what they already have.
You could go 500 again if you get an 18 game.
That's true.
You can go 9-9.
Don't say that, Connor. Please, we don't want to go 9-9. I mean, hey, if you want to go 9-9, I'm fine with it. But hey, just saying.
615-737-1025. If you want to chime in, our phone and text line is driven by WilsonCountyHyundai.com. We're going to give away some tickets here. Jamie Johnson at First Bank Amphitheater on June 28th. If you are caller number 3 right now, you win those tickets. Call in now, 615-737-1025. When we come back, we're going to talk some Vandy baseball. Talk about the excitement going on right now in Hoover with 3 straight wins for Tim Corbin and the Vandy boys. Excited about that, playing in the semifinals tomorrow against either Tennessee or Mississippi State. That's up next. You're on Stillman and Company, Force Company, filling in for Jared today here on 102.5, 106.3 The Game.
Vandy wins it on to the semis. Here are the Mets. It's Vanderbilt who gets their own brand of magic and finishes off States in the bottom of the ninth, 4-3. Vandy on to the semis on Saturday.
Vanderbilt baseball taking down Nick Frazier's Mississippi State Bulldogs last night, late night in Hoover, Alabama. Vandy moves on to the SEC semifinals, going to be played tomorrow against either Mississippi State or Tennessee. Stillman Company here on this Friday afternoon. Force Company in for Jared today. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, and Connor Newt. This Vandy team, just when everyone was kind of giving up on them, they really struggled down the stretch in SEC play. I want to say lost 10 of their last 12 in SEC play. Lots of injuries. But there's something about the Hoover Met and Tim Corbin. 3 straight wins over Florida, Tennessee, and now Mississippi State. 2 games away from winning the second straight SEC title.
They're incredible. I mean, I believe I said this earlier today, or I think it was on Caroline Willie D-Mace. There's something about Tim Corbin. I mean, they just play ball. Once it gets to postseason play, they just play ball on a different level. Like, it's just business as usual. Like, throw out the regular season. You've made it to the postseason. Now that's where you got to put your foot on the pedal and press the gas and go forward.
He's a motivator, man. He knows how to win when it matters. I mean, not that the regular season doesn't matter, but you know he's got his guys playing their best ball of this year, by far. And the pitching has been phenomenal. You know, you have Bryce Cunningham is dealing right now, and what's the other one?
J.D. Thompson has been the guy who stepped up heading into that third game against Tennessee. Vandy, that was kind of a must-win game for Vanderbilt. If they got swept on their own field by Tennessee, would have been tough for them to scratch their way to 13 SEC wins, which historically has kind of been that dividing line. If you're below 13, it's tough for you to get in.
Right.
13 and higher, you're feeling pretty good. And J.D. Thompson comes out and shoves. 6 shutout innings. I want to say he had 8 or 9 strikeouts in that game against a Tennessee lineup that has pretty much dominated SEC pitching this year. And then does the same thing against Kentucky last Sunday, and then yesterday had a great outing against Mississippi State. Really cool to see him step up and really join that top level of Vanderbilt starting pitching with Bryce Cunningham and Devin Futrell, who's back from injury, and he's looked good this year.
Yeah, I mean, with the pitching, I mean, the batting lineup has been phenomenal, in my opinion. The 2 takeaways out of the batting lineup for me is Hewitt and Espinal. Espinal has been great just for the fact that in the last 2 games, he's had, 2 home runs, and he had, 5 RBIs the other night, against Tennessee. And then last night, Hewitt had 2 hits and 1 RBI. Like, when you have RBI machines in your lineup and they just create runs, you're going to win baseball games majority of the time.
It's funny, a couple weeks ago on our Saturday show, we had Andrew Allegretta, the voice of the Vandy Boys, on, and I asked him, I said, who in your mind needs to step up at the plate? And he said, frankly, everyone. And I feel like since he said that, plate discipline has been a lot better. And you mentioned
Calvin Hewitt.
Yeah, Calvin Hewitt. He has been just on the money with his eyes.
Yeah.
Great eyes, and
the discipline's been there.
Contact is there. They're turning it around. I said this earlier in the show, which feels so long ago.
I know. We were saying we don't know how Jared does this every day. 4 hours.
Feels so
We're
long
having fun.
ago. I said it earlier in the show. I feel like this team can make a run. They're seated right where they need to be seated. Right, they're projected a 2 seed, and I think we said it was projected in Indiana State's region. Which, like you said earlier, Jake, if I'm Indiana State and I see Vanderbilt is the 2 seed in my region, I'm shaking in my boots a little bit. But
they went to extra innings too the other night. Indiana State, the Sycamores.
I think Vanderbilt played Indiana State in the midweek this year and won.
Really?
Too. So that was earlier in the year before a lot of these big injuries. But
right.
No, Calvin Hewitt, you guys talking about it, like that's the guy who has really turned around this offensive attack for Vandy. Andrew was talking on the broadcast. I think it was the Tennessee game on Wednesday. Yeah,
Wednesday.
And he said that Calvin Hewitt didn't have a home run until the Kentucky series, I don't think.
Really?
All year. And then he's hit 3 in the last 5 games or something like that. Just ridiculous that and that's what you need if you're going to make a run in the postseason in college baseball. You either need a couple of pitchers who catch fire and can keep you in every single game, or you need a couple of hitters who are going to step their game up in the biggest moments, and we've seen that from Hewitt. And like you mentioned, Alan Espinal, he had those 2 home runs in that game against Tennessee on Wednesday.
Yeah, and also too, you have to remember when you get to the SEC tournament, a lot of teams are not pitching their top ace due to the fact that majority of these teams have kind of already solidified their spot in more of a deeper postseason play for the NCAA national championship. So that just comes to the point of you have to build momentum is what I'm trying to get to. With the Vandy lineup, Andrew Allegretti mentioned a couple weeks ago on the show that this has been just not all there for Vandy. Now with getting, that more plate appearances in the SEC tournament, going up against guys that are still really good pitchers, but yet not the top aces. And so when you get momentum and you start building that, it's just sky's the limit from there on out. And Tim Corbin does a really good job managing that along the way.
Vandy getting this day off is huge, too. You win those first 3 games, you get a little day to rest. Is the elimination games today. We've got Kentucky and South Carolina up in studio right now. Heading to the 8th inning, South Carolina's got a 2-run lead. The winner of that gets LSU in the first of the semifinals tomorrow. And then it'll be Tennessee and Mississippi State coming up after this one. About 3 o'clock tomorrow is when that game's supposed to start between Vanderbilt and the winner of that game. Winner goes to the championship. And Tim Corbin, I mentioned it early in the show, now is the all-time leader among coaches in SEC tournament wins. 46 of them, if I am remembering correctly, passing crazy. Ron Polk. So, man, I'm just saying, Tim Corbin at the Hoover Met, tough to beat him.
You're right. It's tough to beat a guy like that, especially with the just pedigree he has in college baseball. I mean, just the history of just putting together a good program continuously. It's a dynasty. It really is.
It's like, I don't want to put him in the same conversation as this guy, but it's like Nick Saban. If I see Nick Saban in Alabama in the postseason, I do not want to play them.
That's a great comparison.
Yeah.
I definitely own up to that. I would definitely say it. He's the Nick Saban of college baseball, for sure.
Yeah.
I'll give you, how about Tom Izzo?
Yes.
In March.
Tom Izzo.
Tom Izzo, I think, is a good comparison for Tim Corbin. This year, with Michigan State had a down-ish year. They were, a 9 seed in the tournament or something like that? 8 or 9. Like they were in that matchup. And they go out and win their first game because, as John Rothstein says, the calendar goes January, February, Izzo. And I feel like that's the same with Tim Corbin. Things may not go his way during the regular season, but, man, if you give him a fighting chance to get in the dance, Vandy boys have a shot, and we'll see where they're heading for the regionals. They're locked in now. There's no chance that they miss the tournament. It was bubble-ish heading into the week, but with these 3 wins, Vandy will be in and probably a 2 seed in the regional. That's a team that, man, they could be dangerous. Regional weekend's always a fun one, too, with college baseball.
Some crazy upsets go down that weekend.
I know Mississippi State lost to Vanderbilt last night. We were talking about regionals. Mississippi State hosting regionals, it's a blast down at Dudy Noble.
Yeah.
Just putting that out there.
How many SEC teams do we think will actually host a regional? Kentucky, Tennessee,
Georgia.
I'd say Mississippi State.
Maybe Mississippi State, yeah.
I'd put them on the fringe.
Arkansas, probably. Yep. So that's, 5?
5.
Yeah.
I think I heard 11 was the number of teams
A&M?
that are going to get in. Yeah, A&M. I can't believe
A&M,
it. We forgot the Aggies. They were number 1 in the poll for a while. So the SEC, we talk about how SEC in football is kind of pulling away from the rest. I think in baseball, maybe the biggest disparity between conferences.
Dominant.
I agree.
They've won the last 3 national championships, and it feels like every single year the first overall pick in the MLB draft is coming from the SEC.
You'll see it again this year. I think Charlie Condon. Is that
Condon?
Condon.
Yep.
My man.
I think he'll be the number 1 pick.
I mean, look at Skeens, prime example. LSU, first overall pick.
Yep.
And look at him now.
Wentz went 2nd, and then Wyatt Langford from Florida went 4th.
Yep.
They were the first 3 college players taken, all from the SEC. All were playing in the championship series in the College World Series last year.
2 of those 3 are already in the big leagues.
That is true. Dylan Cruz, the only one not.
Yeah.
I think he's in Double-A with the Nationals right now.
Langford, DH of all places for the Texas Rangers.
Yeah.
And Skeens is obviously the ace. So,
well, Charlie Condon, I mentioned this on the Saturday show. He played for the summer league team that I called games for in college, and awesome guy. He was only a walk-on at Georgia when he showed up in St. Cloud, Minnesota that summer. He got offered a scholarship that year, and he has never looked back. He has been awesome to watch. Excited for him. I've met his family. They're all great people. So it'll be cool. Maybe one day I'll be able, or maybe coming up this summer, I'll be able to say I called games for a number 1 overall pick.
That's pretty neat. That's pretty neat.
And he's the SEC Player of the Year as well. But Georgia, they went home day 1 of the SEC tournament. Vanderbilt still playing. And again, they will play tomorrow right around 3, depending on when the first game ends. In the SEC semifinals, that'll be against Tennessee or Mississippi State. And then the championship, if they reach that far, will be 2 o'clock on Sunday. Vandy looking for back-to-back SEC titles down in Hoover. Time to wrap up the show. It's flown by, guys. One more segment to go. We're going to make some weekend picks, although we do have a show tomorrow. So all of our picks have to be for tonight, and we will recap them coming up tomorrow, 9 to 11. Connor Newt also has to take a victory lap for his great weekend picks.
Yeah, he does.
Tomorrow.
No, you can do it
tomorrow.
now.
No,
we're making picks right now.
Oh, okay. My bad. I didn't know if it was just Saturday thing or not.
No, this is my time.
Well, Connor's going to get his victory lap coming up next, and we'll make some picks and send you off to your Memorial Day weekend here on Stillman Company, 102.5, 106.3 The Game. Wrapping up the show here on Stillman and Company, heading into Memorial Day weekend. Fours Company sitting in for Jared. Big thanks to Chase McCabe for the opportunity today. It's been fun. Jake Lyman, Nick Frazier, Connor Newt, Ian Safar behind the glass. We'll be rejoined by our fourth member, Nick Keyser, tomorrow morning as he's preparing for his wedding this weekend. So I'm sure we'll talk a lot about that tomorrow morning. But let's wrap up our show with some weekend picks. Before we get into it, Connor, I will let you have your little victory lap, just as I did when I picked the Kentucky Derby. Connor Newt, go ahead.
All right, acknowledge me, everyone. Okay, so last week I went off the dome, and we were picking the PGA Championship, and I know nothing about golf. So I said, I think Xander Schauffele would win, and I didn't even say his name correctly. And what happened? Xander Schauffele won. I also picked, I picked Vanderbilt to beat Kentucky. That happened. And then I picked Edmonton Oilers to force Game 7 against Vancouver. That obviously happened. They obviously won, and they are up 1-0 against the Stars. So victory lap for me, 3 of 3. If we were keeping records, and I should really start doing that.
That's your job, man.
Yeah, I should start doing that.
That's your job.
I would have just moved up in the standings, I believe.
I think so. I think I went 2-1.
In a roundabout way, you call this the preseason until he starts.
That is true. It's until he starts writing
so
down
none
stats.
of this matters.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's make our picks. We're going to make a lot of picks this weekend. Again, if you haven't had enough of us yet, tomorrow 9 to 11, we'll be back on the air with our usual show. And then a special edition Memorial Day, 11 to 2:30. You can tune in then. But let's make our weekend picks, but our Friday night picks in a way. Let's start with some SEC baseball. The winner gets Vanderbilt tomorrow, Mississippi State, Tennessee. Nick Frazier, are you going with your Bulldogs?
I am going with my Bulldogs. I just think Tony Vitello and the Big Orange can't succeed this time around. So going with the Diamond Dogs. Take Mississippi State to win by 3 runs.
I'm going to take the Bulldogs too, actually. I think they bounced back from last night. I think they're mad. I think the hitting comes in, and look, Tennessee's not going to hit like they do every day. So I'll take the Bulldogs to advance and get their revenge against Vanderbilt.
I'll go with the Bulldogs too, actually. I think Tennessee has their sights set higher. I think maybe they're starting to look ahead. After losing that game to Vanderbilt, I think that maybe they're starting to look ahead to the regionals and wanting to save pitching and all that stuff. So I will go with the Bulldogs as well. Next up, coming up tonight, Rangers-Panthers Game 2. Panthers took Game 1. Connor Newt, do they take a 2-0 lead back to Florida?
Nope. No, I think the Rangers level the series. It's in Madison Square Garden, correct? I believe.
Yes.
Yeah. That's a tough place to play, man. And the Rangers don't lose there often, especially this year. So, yeah, I like that. I like the bread man. What's it?
Artemi Panarin.
Artemi Panarin. Yes. Yeah. I like him to score, and I like the Rangers. I feel like this will be a lower scoring game. I'll say 3-2.
Really? Yeah. I am also taking the Rangers. That is it just has to be leveled. It's playoff hockey. You can't really go wrong with a 1-1 series going back to Florida. So going with the Rangers.
We can't all agree on on all the picks here. I'll take the Panthers. I think Florida they won 3-0 in Game 1. I think Florida they've got the juice right now. They've got the momentum. And I think they're going to know that this is a chance to kind of step on the Rangers' throat early in this series, get a 2-0 lead heading back home. Then really, as long as you win 1 at home, you're feeling pretty good about the series. I will take the Florida Panthers. And let's wrap things up with a wild card. Just some game going on tonight that you guys have an opinion on. Connor, you got one?
I'll take my St. Louis Cardinals to take down the Cubs. Frazier and I were talking off the air, and he believes this will be a no-homer game. No home runs. I have a hard time believing that with Miles Mikolas on the mound.
Yeah.
But I'll take the Cardinals. They don't know how to lose anymore. They've won, I believe, 9 of their last 10. Is that correct?
That
8 of the last 9?
Right.
Something like that. But, yeah, I'll take the Cardinals to win. I love the way they're playing. I love the way Lars Nootbaar is playing. Yeah, I'll take the Cardinals in a kind of a barn burner. I'll take them 6-4.
Okay. You guys know where I'm going with my wild card. the NRL, the Australian Rugby League.
The Ballyhoos.
This is not the Ballyhoos tonight. This is the Cronulla Sharks versus the Penrith Panthers. So there is the leading try scorer, basically like leads the league in touchdowns for people that like follow NFL. Ronaldo Militao is the leading leading try scorer for the NRL. So I think they might actually beat the Penrith Panthers. And this team they're like the Tom Brady New York Patriots of the league. So if they take down the Panthers, they have a solid shot. So let's go Sharks. Let's do it.
The New York Patriots.
The New York Patriots?
Oh, sorry. The New England Patriots. I mean, I've been here since 7, guys. Just cut me some slack here.
I can't give any input on whether that's a good pick or a bad pick.
I'll give you guys the updates tomorrow when we get here.
Sounds
3
good.
3 a.m. kickoff.
I am going to say the Timberwolves even up the series with Dallas, and I think that's in Minnesota. So I think the Timberwolves get the win and get that to 1-1. That does it for us here on this Friday afternoon. Again, a big thanks to Chase McCabe, Jared Stillman for letting us sit in here for Jared on this Friday afternoon. Have a great start to your Memorial Day weekend. And again, you can tune in with us, Force Company, 9 to 11 tomorrow. We're rejoined by Nick Keiser. ESPN Radio is coming up next here on 102.5 The Game. Enjoy your Friday night. We'll talk to you tomorrow.